Chapter 883. Young Dingtian had won. Even though no one was able to see how he had won, he was able to do so. In fact, most of the people present were unable to comprehend a battle of this level. However, this did not stop them from cheering and going crazy. Their leader, Yang Dingtian, had only spent 2 years to become a half-saint and had defeated another half-saint. This was a miracle. No, this was a miracle. How could they not go crazy? Long live, long live. Long live sect leader Yang Dingtian. The entire Tianqi Academy and Shijing had become a sea of excitement. After the victory, Yang Dingtian did not make a speech. He only glanced at all the students of the Tianqi Academy, then flew into the sky and flew toward the southern barbarian continent. Dongfang Minmi and the other higher-ups of the Council of Light also rode on their demon eagles and flew toward Zhongjing. There would definitely be a celebration banquet in the Tianqi Academy and Shijing tonight. However, Yang Dingtian did not have time to attend. Dongfang Minmi and the others did not have time to attend either. The southern barbarian continent had entered the most dangerous stage. Thousands of battleships of the Council of Light and tens of thousands of air troops, equipped with Phoenix-level missiles, had surrounded the eastern part of the southern barbarian continent, especially the bases and cities built by the Snake People Empire. The Snake People Empire's army did not back down at all. Nearly 1 million half-human soldiers were stationed behind the various defense lines. The higher-ups of the Vulture Palace, who were loyal to Wu Daozi, also led the 200,000 Black Vulture army to confront the Council of Light's army in the sky. Wu Daozi's order was very clear. As long as the Council of Light fired a cannon or a crossbow arrow, it would be considered a declaration of war. The Black Vulture army of the Vulture Palace counterattacked completely and did not back down at all. Therefore, the commander of this battle, Zhuo Qingqi, was extremely nervous. He constantly ordered all the troops to be careful and not to fire accidentally. Everyone was eagerly waiting for the results of the Tianqi Academy's tournament. They were waiting for Yang Dingtian's final order. If Yang Dingtian won, then the fight would start immediately. If Yang Dingtian lost, he would immediately withdraw his troops. All of a sudden, the army of the Council of Light completely ignored the crazy humiliation and provocation of the warriors of the Naga Empire and remained motionless. You lowly humans, what are you waiting for? Start the war, start the war. Waiting for Yang Dingtian? Yang Dingtian is dead for sure. In a moment, Wu Daozi will deliver his head. Yang Dingtian isn't just going to die. Even those beautiful wives of his are going to be divided up by others? Really? Then let's hurry up and go. We might even be able to grab 1 or 2. I heard that they are all peerless beauties. After you are tired of sleeping with them, you can kill them with a knife, cook them alive, and eat them. I guarantee that they will be very tender, ha 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 ha. What? You are willing to cook them and eat them? I guarantee that I won't be tired of them for 100 years. The half-human race of the Naga Empire, especially the werewolf race, had a deep hatred for Yang Dingtian. Their words were extremely vicious. The army of the Council of Light was so angry that they trembled all over. They wished that they could immediately blow this group of beasts into meat paste. However, under Zhuo Qingqi's orders, everyone remained motionless and prepared to fight at any time. However, they absolutely could not allow any mishaps to occur. I wonder if the tournament over there has already ended? Vulture could not help but ask. So what if it has ended or not? The result is the same anyway. Yang Dingtian is bound to lose. Wolingzi said indifferently, stop dreaming. That little thief Yang Dingtian is no match for that old thief. Vulture said. Then do you think that Yang Dingtian will die? Wolingzi sneered. What? You still can't bear to part with him? No. Vulture said, he better win. If he can't, then he will die. Wolingzi sneered. You will be disappointed. Yang Dingtian can't beat Wu Daozi, but he won't die either. He is very lucky. Vulture was silent for a moment, then said, is there no chance of winning? If he wins, what are you going to do? I have never thought about it because it is impossible. Even Yang Dingtian himself has never thought of winning. Wolingzi said, this is just Yang Dingtian's strategic blackmail. His biggest goal is to drive a wedge between me and Wu Daozi. He wants to lure me into a fight with Wu Daozi. However, his foolish plan will not succeed. On the contrary, he will suffer a great defeat and suffer a great fall in front of the world. Vulture sneered. You want Wu Daozi to win that much? No, I want him to die. I am the person who wants him to die the most in this world. However, this is impossible. Wulingzi said. If you want Yang Dingtian to win, the sun will rise in the west and the sea will flow backward. Just wait, Wu Daozi will be back soon. Yang Dingtian's millions of troops will soon retreat with their tails between their legs. At this moment, there was a sudden whistling sound from outside. This was the sound of an extremely fast-speed sonic boom. Then, there was a very familiar voice outside, saying loudly, the master of the hidden sect, Yang Dingtian, has come to pay a visit to the master of the Vulture Palace, Wulingzi. Please come out and pay your respects. After Yang Dingtian's voice fell, Wulingzi did not come out. Instead, the other people of the Vulture Palace poked their heads out and looked around. Everyone in the Vulture Palace had no suspense about the result of the competition. They all thought that Yang Dingtian would lose without a doubt. However, they were still very concerned about the result. At least, they wanted to make sure that Wu Daozi had won. When Yang Dingtian's voice sounded, everyone in the Vulture Palace was shocked. How could it be Yang Dingtian's voice? Could it be that he had won? Impossible, absolutely impossible. Yang Dingtian was at most an infinite great grandmaster. He was still far from the half-saint. It was impossible for him to break through to the half-saint in less than a few decades. Moreover, their master Wu Daozi's cultivation was not only at the half-saint level, but he also had the evil spirit energy. Yang Dingtian would not only lose but also die. However, it was really Yang Dingtian's voice outside. The first one to rush out was none other than Spirit Rabbit. The moment she rushed out, she was full of joy. She was really worried that Yang Dingtian would die. She really hoped that Yang Dingtian would win and stop her ambitious grandfather. However, after rushing out, the first thing she saw was Yang Dingtian. And the second thing she saw was her grandfather's bloody head. Suddenly, Spirit Rabbit's eyes turned black. The world was spinning, and she was completely unconscious. The two middle-aged women behind her hurriedly came forward to support her. Although Yang Dingtian felt guilty, he did not go forward. Gradually, more and more people flew out from various peaks and pavilions. In the end, almost all the masters of the Vulture Palace flew out. Hundreds of masters, the highest level of the Vulture Palace, were all here. They also saw the safe and sound Yang Dingtian, and the bloody head in his hand. Yes, this was Wu Daozi's head. It was so vivid, majestic, and domineering that it made people shudder. Then the whole Vulture Palace trembled completely. How is this possible? Yang Dingtian really defeated Wu Daozi, a half-saint master, and killed him. This was completely impossible. Even if the sun rose in the west, it was impossible for such a thing to happen. However, the fact was that it happened. Truly, everyone was completely and utterly shocked. All the masters of the Vulture Palace felt that their heads were exploding. For a moment, they could hardly think or react. Wu Daozi, who was so majestic and invincible before, who forced their ancestor Wulingzi to retreat, was now dead, and his head was cut off. This was completely related to their lives. One had to know that there were many people present who had betrayed Wulingzi and sought refuge with Wu Daozi. Now that Wu Daozi was dead, didn't that mean that they would be punished in the future? Finally, Wulingzi came out with Vulture. When he saw Yang Dingtian, and the head in his hand, he still didn't dare to believe it even though the truth was right in front of him. He even shook his head vigorously, as if he wanted to wake himself up. God, how is this possible? He just said that Yang Dingtian would only win if the sun rose in the west, and the sea flowed backward. But now Yang Dingtian really won. Suddenly, Wulingzi almost lost any ability to speak. Vulture was completely in ecstasy. Although she was curious about Yang Dingtian's ability to defeat Wu Daozi, she didn't care. She only cared about the result. Wu Daozi was dead. Great. Now the Vulture Palace was back in the hands of her great-grandfather, which meant that it was back in her hands. She could call the wind and summon the rain in the Vulture Palace again. Those who had offended her and neglected her before would all be punished and punished. That bitch rabbit spirit was going to turn from a phoenix to a pheasant. Vulture was so excited that the blood in her body seemed to be boiling. She even felt like she was floating. This feeling was too good, too good. I, Vulture, am back. I will take revenge. I will definitely take revenge. I won't let a single one of them go. Yang Dingtian directly came in front of Wolingzi and threw Wu Daozi's head to him. He said slowly, I have killed the traitor of the Vulture Palace. From today onwards, the Vulture Palace will set things right. Ling Chuzi is once again the master of the Vulture Palace. You are still the Grand Palace Master of the Vulture Palace. Do you have any objections? At this time, Wolingzi came to his senses and picked up Wu Daozi's bloody head. Yes, this was Wu Daozi. Whether it was his eyes or his expression, it was 100% Wu Daozi. Even if he turned into ashes, he would still recognize him. Wu Daozi was really dead. He was really dead. Wolingzi had looked forward to Wu Daozi's death countless times. He couldn't let him die in his hands, and he couldn't be suspected of anything. Otherwise, the evil ways would crazily take revenge. Now, Wu Daozi was killed by Yang Dingtian. This was almost the perfect ending. Then Wolingzi was shocked. He thought, the Temple of Annihilation won't think that I colluded with Yang Dingtian to kill Wu Daozi. Please don't. I must draw a clear line with Yang Dingtian. Suddenly, Wolingzi's face turned cold. No matter how wrong Wu Daozi is, he's still a member of the Vulture Palace. It's not up to you to discipline him. Now that you've killed him, you've killed a pillar of the Vulture Palace. You must give me an explanation. In order to draw a clear line with Yang Dingtian, Wolingzi really went all out. These few words were extremely harsh. Yang Dingtian's eyes turned cold. He said slowly, Your Excellency Wolingzi, are you also rebelling? Wolingzi said sternly, What rebellion? Yang Dingtian said, Don't forget, the Vulture Palace is still a member of the Council of Light, and is under my leadership. Now, the Snakeman Empire's million troops have entered the southern barbarian continent, without the Council of Light unifying them. Don't you think this is a rebellion? Wolingzi said loudly, This matter was caused by Wu Daozi alone. Yang Dingtian said, Good. Now, I want to destroy the Snakeman Empire's army, invading the southern barbarian continent. Your Vulture Palace's Black Vulture Legion is actually blocking my path. Let me ask you one thing. When I attack the Snakeman Empire's army, are you going to attack? If you attack, it's a rebellion? After I wipe out the Snakeman Empire's army, I'll also slaughter the Vulture Palace. You dare? Big words don't slander. Wolingzi laughed. Yang Dingtian sneered. Even Wu Daozi, who has evil spirit energy, died in my hands. Do you think I can do it? Suddenly, Wolingzi felt a chill under his teeth and immediately shut up. Wolingzi, Yang Dingtian said coldly, we have more than 10,000 cannons, thousands of large-caliber missiles, and tens of thousands of Phoenix-class missiles aimed at your Vulture Palace and your Black Vulture Legion. Let me ask you one thing. Do you want to live, or do you want to die? If you want to die, I'll give the order to wipe out the 200,000 Black Vulture Legionnaires and raze the Vulture Palace to the ground. Then I'll lead a dozen or so unbounded Grandmasters into the Vulture Palace and use my martial arts skills to slaughter your Vulture Palace. Yang Dingtian's words were filled with bloodthirst and undisguised murderous aura. You want to die, or you want to live? Yang Dingtian said, his voice booming like thunder. Your choice. All of a sudden, the entire Spirit Vulture Palace shuddered. As for Wolingzi, his face was ashen, and he was trembling. This wretched old villain was both greedy for life and afraid of death. In private, he was willing to drop to his knees. But in front of all the experts in the Vulture Palace, it was impossible for him to admit defeat. Seeing that Wolingzi wasn't saying anything, Yang Dingtian chuckled coldly, then unleashed the Million Spirit Demon Fire, Devil Spirit Demon Fire, and Voidrun Flame, all of which were primal chaos type. They shot up into the air toward Wolingzi's mountain. Then they slammed into each other. Rumble! It was like the explosion of a nuclear warhead. The sky seemed to be ripped apart, and the two suns lost their light. A special type of flame that surpassed the 19th order exploded. Even from tens of thousands of meters away, the experts present felt a shockwave so powerful that they couldn't even breathe. Then, the mountain peak that Wolingzi lived in was directly torn apart, smashed into pieces. The enormous mountain was flattened by hundreds of meters. Such power was enough to destroy heaven and extinguish the earth. Wuxia was completely shaken. Chapter 884. This lone peak was Wuxia's residence. It was the symbol of his supreme position in the Vulture Palace. Even when Wu Daozi took over, he did not deprive Wuxia of his position. But now, Yang Dingtian had actually shaved off the entire mountain peak by relying on his strength. How shocking was this? Wuxia's entire body was completely numb. He was confident that he was stronger than Wu Daozi. The reason why he did not start the battle was that he was afraid of the evil ways behind Wu Daozi. He also felt that Wu Daozi would not live for long, and that the Vulture Palace would eventually fall into his hands. But he really could not cut off a mountain by 1,000 feet. But Yang Dingtian had done it. So, how could he not be shocked? As for the remaining experts of the spiritual Vulture Palace, they were completely divided. They even had a vague feeling that the world was about to change. And the key was that Yang Dingtian was so powerful. But he was not even 30 years old yet. How powerful would he be in the future? It was completely unimaginable. Perhaps the world was really going to change. After Yang Dingtian performed a shocking attack, he said to Wuxia, "My army has already surrounded the Snake People Empire's army in the southern barbarian continent. They are just waiting for my order to fire. If you want your Black Vulture Corps to be wiped out, then stay here and don't move. Otherwise, come with me and bring the Black Vulture Corps back to the Vulture Palace with Wu Daozi's head." After saying that, Yang Dingtian flew toward the east of the southern barbarian continent, without another word. Wuxia was definitely the kind of person who would not leave until he was led. After hearing Yang Dingtian's words, he snorted coldly and flew toward the east of the southern barbarian continent with Wu Daozi's head in his hand. The eastern battlefield of the southern barbarian continent had entered the most tense state. When the generals of the Naga Empire saw that the Council of Light Corps did not dare to make a move, their provocations became more and more frenzied. At first, it was just verbal humiliation. Then, some male half-humans took out huge objects and peed on the Council of Light Legion. Then, he used the most vulgar and vicious words to profane Yang Dingtian's women and family. In the end, he decided to roleplay. He found a few extremely ugly female half-human race and put them on women's clothes. Then, he wrote the names of Yang Dingtian's wives on them. Then these ugly female half-humans played the role of Yang Dingtian's wives. On the city wall, they flirted with the Council of Light Legion, took off their clothes, and did countless indecent things. Then they made many male half-humans take turns to do those dirty things with them. Suddenly, the people from the Council of Light Legion were so furious that their stomachs were about to explode. He really wanted to rush up and tear these beasts to shreds, tearing their bodies into 1,000 pieces. However, Zhuqingqi floated in the air and did not move. Therefore, the Council of Light Legion was full of murderous intent, but they did not move. When the Naga Empire saw that the Council of Light Legion was so tolerant, they despised them even more. Finally, there was a human that appeared out of nowhere, and he actually looked 30 to 40% similar to Yang Dingtian. After putting on makeup, he looked even more like Yang Dingtian. Then, they dressed him up like a clown and humiliated him on the city wall. The human who played the role of Yang Dingtian cried and begged for mercy. He shouted, "I'll give you my wife, my mother-in-law, and my butt. Don't kill me, don't kill me." At first, the Black Vulture Legion of the Vulture Palace was very respectful of Yang Dingtian and the Council of Light Legion. However, when they saw how the Radiance Parliament's army was being humiliated and didn't retaliate, they started to look down on Yang Dingtian and laughed heartily. They had even joined the group that was humiliating Yang Dingtian. When Yang Dingtian arrived at the scene, the drama on the city wall of the Queen's new city of the Naga Empire had reached its climax. The fake Yang Dingtian, who had been stripped of his clothes and was being humiliated, had his head chopped off by the axe. Blood spurted out, and his head fell from the city wall hundreds of meters away. His body was still being humiliated. Then, the entire Naga Empire went completely crazy. They waved their swords and opened their giant crossbows. "Kill, kill, kill!" The Naga Empire's barbarian army, who had been set ablaze, did not care anymore. They directly shot arrows at the fleet of the Council of Light. Yang Dingtian flew directly to the coastal city wall of the Queen's new city, like a flash of lightning. In an instant, countless arrows were shot at him. They were like a storm in dark clouds. Yang Dingtian suddenly opened his palm. Suddenly, tens of thousands of arrows were frozen in the air, motionless. It was as if a movie had been paused. Then, Yang Dingtian clenched his fist. Tens of thousands of arrows were instantly crushed in the air and turned into nothingness. Yang Dingtian was back. Seeing this scene, all the anger in the hearts of the 1,000,000 troops of the Council of Light were swept away. All their worries were gone. Zhuo Qingqi breathed a long sigh of relief. Yang Dingtian's return meant that he had won the competition with Wu Daozi. Then, Wulingzi and many experts of the Vulture Palace flew over. Wulingzi saw the 200,000 Black Vulture troops on his side and suddenly felt a little emboldened. He said to Yang Dingtian, "Your Excellency Yang Dingtian, you and I will mind our own business. The Naga Empire's garrison in the South Barbarian continent is the internal affairs of the Vulture Palace. I will naturally interfere. Please withdraw your troops and leave." Yang Dingtian stared at him coldly, full of disdain and contempt. He said coldly, "Either get lost or die. Don't force me to completely trample on your old face in front of everyone. Don't force me to slaughter your Vulture Palace and leave no one alive." His voice was very loud, and everyone heard it. Suddenly, everyone looked at Wulingzi. It was a great humiliation. The ancestor of the Vulture Palace was humiliated like this in front of hundreds of thousands of Black Vulture troops. It was absolutely a great humiliation. Wulingzi's face instantly lost all color. He really wanted to immediately give the order to fight to the death with Yang Dingtian. However, if he had the courage, he would have fought to the death with Wu Daozi. Yang Dingtian's bones would have been turned to ashes. This person was extremely proud, but he could also endure humiliation. He was really an extremely contradictory weirdo. Then, Yang Dingtian came to the front of Queen's new city and said loudly, "Who is the city lord of Queen's new city?" "It's me." Suddenly, a woman's voice sounded. It was another unfamiliar female Naga general. She was half an adult, and only had a snake tail left. She had a bewitching face and a deep scar on her face, which made her originally gorgeous face look even more ferocious. Another Grand Master of the Naga clan. Another Naga clan member, who had broken through by force through evil means. However, Yang Dingtian firmly believed that there wouldn't be a second half-sage in the Naga Empire. This was because Queen Hai Xian didn't allow any Naga to be on the same level as her. Only when she broke through to the saint level would she allow her subordinates to become half-sages. Yang Dingtian spoke unhurriedly. "If you bring the half-human race and your clansmen and leave the South Barbarian continent under the surveillance of my Radiance Parliament, leave the human kingdoms, and return to the Snakeman Empire, then everything will still be in time. Otherwise, don't blame me for disregarding my old relationship with Queen Hai Xian and exterminating all of you." "Bah, lowly human." What answered Yang Dingtian was a mouthful of saliva that was as sharp as a sword. It directly spat at Yang Dingtian's face. Yang Dingtian flicked his finger lightly, and the poisonous snake's saliva instantly turned into ashes. Then he waved his hand and ordered, "Kill. Don't leave a person, a blade of grass, or a tree alive in Queen's new city." Yes, don't leave a person, a blade of grass, or a tree alive in Queen's new city. The supreme commander of this battle, Zhuo Qingqi, repeated Yang Dingtian's order word by word. Then he waved the order flag and roared, "Kill." Boom, 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 boom. Suddenly, the sky and earth completely changed color. The entire earth seemed to be completely torn apart by extremely fierce flames. On thousands of warships, tens of thousands of cannons were all fired. This wasn't an adjective, but a real simultaneous firing of tens of thousands of cannons. Hundreds of large short-range missiles suddenly whistled from the warships and smashed toward Queen's new city with long tails of flame. In an instant, it completely covered the sky. Countless cannons formed a metal rainstorm that completely covered the light in the sky. Just less than a minute later, countless cannons violently smashed onto the incomparably huge city wall. Boom, 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 boom. In an instant, the incomparably solid city wall that was like a mountain was completely torn apart like a child's toy. Boulders of thousands of kilograms and tens of thousands of kilograms were violently thrown into the sky. The half-human army on the city wall, regardless of whether they were werewolves or leopard men, no matter how agile or powerful they were all smashed into pieces. In an instant, all of them were smashed into pieces. Not to mention dying without a complete corpse, they were completely smashed into pieces. The incomparably huge Queen's new city, that looked completely indestructible, was completely as fragile as a flower in a storm. It was constantly being torn apart and smashed into pieces. And this simultaneous firing of tens of thousands of cannons was definitely not just once, twice, or even 8 or 10 times. It was never going to stop. Round after round, round after round. It was completely the most thorough, the craziest metal frenzy, the most complete storm of destruction. The incomparably arrogant and crazy half-human army, that was previously incomparably arrogant and crazy, couldn't even be seen, let alone counterattack. The terrifying giant crossbows placed on the city wall were instantly shattered, let alone counterattack. One round of tens of thousands of cannons. One round of tens of thousands of cannons. Just like that, like a rainstorm, they crazily smashed onto Queen's new city. In the beginning, they used Phoenix-level cannons with X crystals. Later on, they used cannons with ordinary crystals. In the end, they used intense gunpowder cannons, as well as solidified fire oil and white phosphorus cannons. It was completely a devastating blow. It was a complete carpet bombing. Wuxia and the Vulture Palace, and the hundreds of thousands of Black Vulture troops were completely stunned. Even the ferocious Black Vulture, who didn't know what fear was, couldn't help but tremble at this moment. The scene of hundreds of thousands of cannons bombarding and exploding. No matter who saw it, even the Naga people, they would tremble all over. This was the first most grand performance after the combination of science, industry, and crystal mystery. In this battle, the power that Yang Dingtian had in his hands was more than 1,000 times that of when he fought against Qin Chichi in Cloud Sky City. It was more than 100 times that of when he fought against Zhu Qingzhu on the sea. This incomparably shocking carpet bombing was only a small part of the production of the entire war machine of the Council of Light in these few years. The Council of Light had hundreds of secret munitions factories. If they were fully operational, they could produce more than tens of thousands of cannons in a few days. Wuxia and all the masters in the Vulture Palace saw this scene. It was completely 2 waves of tremors. The ground within 100 miles was instantly turned into nothingness, and instantly shattered into pieces. At this moment, there was only one sentence in Wuxia's mind. The times have changed. The times have really changed. We are going to fall behind. At least in terms of war, it had been completely overturned. The only thing that Yang Dingtian hadn't overturned was the power of martial arts. But it should be soon. He wasn't even 30 years old, but he had already killed a half-saint expert. Moreover, it was a half-saint expert with evil energy. Suddenly, a strange thought appeared in Wuxia's mind for the first time. Perhaps Yang Dingtian could really defeat the evil ways, defeat the Temple of Annihilation, and even defeat the Demon King Wentian? Finally, the deafening bombing ended. The frenzied bombardment was over, and the carpet bombing was over. When the smoke gradually dissipated, everyone saw that the incomparably grand and huge city walls had long disappeared without a trace. The ground within 100 miles seemed to have been completely plowed by demons. Everywhere it was distorted. Even the stones and soil were completely burned. Everywhere, there were distorted signs of being burned. Because the Council of Light Corps had thrown hundreds of thousands of large-scale napalm bombs on this land. As for the densely packed half-human race army, those crazily clamoring half-human race army that looked incomparably powerful had disappeared. Even their corpses couldn't be seen. They were completely smashed into pieces. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly flew up from behind the queen. It was the main air force of the Snake People Empire, the Dark Bats. Tens of thousands of them flew into the air from 100 miles away and madly rushed toward the Council of Light Corps. Zhuo Qingqi smiled disdainfully and waved the command flag. In an instant the Golden Condor Legion, numbering less than 1,000, charged forward with a whistling sound. Seeing that the Council of Light had only sent out 1,000 golden condors, the Bat Corps of the Snake People Empire suddenly roared. The people of the Vulture Palace were also shocked. This Council of Light was too arrogant. Even if you had small missiles, 1,000 golden condors rushing up was simply courting death. One must know that these dark bats were second only to the Black Vulture Corps. And they could also spray venom. However, when there were still 40 to 50 miles between them, 1,000 golden eagles and warriors heading north all carried small launchers. Whoosh 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 whoosh. 1,000 of the latest Phoenix-level missiles with X crystals were shot out. Their speed was as fast as lightning. It was impossible to see clearly with the naked eye as they whizzed past. Just a few seconds later, 1,000 Phoenix-level missiles violently hit the countless Dark Bat Corps. Boom! In an instant, the entire sky seemed to be torn apart. Chapter 885. Today's Phoenix-level missiles, regardless of the X crystal content, were much higher than before. Moreover, the proportion of Wind-type and Fire-type demon cores had been changed, so the lethality had been doubled. Not only that, but there were also a considerable number of incendiary bombs. Even if the Black Vultures were touched by a little, they would not be spared. After the shocking explosion of thousands of Phoenix-level missiles, in an instant, a large space was emptied in the middle of the Snake People Empire's Dark Bat Army. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Then the second and third wave of Phoenix-level missiles quickly came. After only 5 waves of attacks, less than half of the Snake People Empire's dense bat army was left. Under the command of the female Snake People General, the remaining bat-flying cavalry quickly dispersed. Once the targets in the air were scattered, it was no longer cost-effective to use Phoenix-level missiles. The lethality and cost-effectiveness would become very low. Thousands of Golden Eagle Army immediately changed their formation and formed a circle in the air at the fastest speed. Then, all of them put down their Phoenix-level missile launchers and replaced them with mid-sized crystal crossbows. After 2 years of development, the technology of mid-sized crystal crossbows had completely improved by leaps and bounds. The biggest breakthrough was the mass shooting. 10 corrosive poison arrows could be shot at a time, and they were shot out in a fan shape. Not only that, but the interval between each shot was also shortened by many times. More than 5 or 6 shots could be fired per minute. After thousands of Golden Eagle Army formed a large circular formation, they immediately rotated quickly in the air, waiting for the Snake People Empire's Bat Army to approach. The remaining 10,000 bats surrounded the Golden Eagle Army from all directions. Each bat was dozens of meters away from each other, and they were constantly changing their direction. They were getting closer and closer to the Golden Eagle Army. When they were 2,000 or 3,000 meters away, whoosh 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 whoosh, thousands of Golden Eagle Army began to shoot wildly. Each Golden Eagle Army to the north had 2 to 3 mid-sized crystal crossbows. So in each wave, there were tens of thousands of poison arrows shot out crazily. Moreover, this shooting did not have a standard aiming process. It was completely a whole action. The entire circular formation was constantly changing its direction. So countless arrows were shot out from every direction. It was a complete coverage attack. Suddenly, a burst of poison arrows was seen in the air, like a rainstorm. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The rain of poison arrows was madly shooting. Every arrow here was poisonous. Currently, the Council of Light's team of mysterious warlocks had more than 10,000 members. As for poisons, it was the most thoroughly researched field. It could be said that other than the deep-sea Xian poison, which was forbidden, countless other poisons have been researched and discovered. Moreover, the arrowhead of each poisonous arrow was plated with a layer of bloody black gold. That's right, the current Council of Light was rich to this extent. Even the arrows were plated with bloody black gold. It sounded shocking, but in the giant mine in the extreme south, besides Crystal X, there was also a large amount of bloody black gold. Moreover, every poisonous arrow was plated with bloody black gold, which sounded quite astonishing. But in reality, an ordinary piece of bloody black gold or could be plated with 1,000 poison arrows. That's right, there were 1,000 of them, and they were just a thin layer on the outside. Before this was impossible because it was impossible to melt the bloody black gold. Only the mystic flame could do it. But the experts of the Council of Light couldn't use the mystic flame to melt the bloody black gold every day. This was all thanks to the warlock team of the Council of Light. They used Crystal X and various demon nuclei to build a large-scale reaction array. The temperature that this reaction array could release was actually not inferior to the earth fire generated by nature, or even higher. As a result, the forging standards of the Council of Light had completely increased by several levels. Now, how much bloody black gold did the Council of Light have in storage? Although it was very rare, with the power of the entire human kingdom, the current storage of bloody black gold was an astronomical figure. Therefore, every warrior of the Demon Vulture Legion and the Demon Dragon Legion were equipped with bloody black gold swords and bloody black gold armors. All of this became a reality. The poisonous arrows of the Air Ace Legion were plated with bloody black gold, and all of them were plated with bloody black gold. And the arrows plated with bloody black gold were highly toxic, which was researched by the warlock team. The power of such poisonous arrows was completely unimaginable. In short, as long as they were hit, they would basically die. No matter where they were shot. Even if they hit the claws of the winged cavalry, they would basically die. Therefore, the bat-winged cavalry of the Snake People Empire was completely destroyed. Although the hit rate of the poisonous arrows was very low, the dark bats of the Snake People Empire were like raindrops, constantly falling. Moreover, the closer they got, the higher the chance of being hit. After only 15 minutes, the Bat Legion of the Snake People Empire had lost more than half of its members. At this time, they were only less than 2,000 meters away from the Golden Condor Legion. The commander of the Golden Condor Legion ordered, "Destroy them one by one." Suddenly, the Golden Condor Legion spread out, flying out in groups of 5 to hunt. The Bat Legion of the Snake People Empire sadly discovered that their combat power was not inferior to the Golden Condors at all. In fact, they were even stronger. Whether it was flying speed or combat power, they surpassed the Golden Condors. However, they couldn't get close to the Golden Condors at all. On each Golden Condor, there were a total of 3 medium-sized crystal crossbows. They didn't stop at all, and wave after wave of poisonous arrows were fired. Basically, 1 against 2, 3, or even 5 was no problem. Creak, creak. The Dark Bat Legion in the air screamed and fell continuously. Finally, after just half an hour, there were no longer any traces of the Bat Legion in the air. 1,000 Golden Condor Legions, armed to the teeth, had slaughtered tens of thousands of powerful Bat Legions. There were no casualties at all. Of course, the number of poisonous arrows fired by the Golden Condor Legion was in the millions. However, most of these poisonous arrows could be recovered from the battlefield and reused. In this battle, the Council of Light was completely showing off to the Vulture Palace. This was only the Golden Condor Legion, and not the Demon Condor Legion. The trump card of the Council of Light, the Demon Condor Legion, was more than a few times more powerful than the Golden Condor Legion. Now the Council of Light had a total of 4,000 Demon Condor Legions, and more than 10,000 Golden Condor Legions. The remaining winged cavalry, together with the first-line aerial legion, totaled more than 100,000. If the second-line and third-line winged cavalry, such as the Griffins, were included, the aerial legion controlled by the Council of Light could exceed 1,000,000 when necessary. It could be said that the Council of Light under the leadership of Yang Dingtian was more than several times more powerful than the Tiando League 200 years ago. If this doomsday battle was of the same level as the one 200 years ago, it could be said that the Legion of Doom would be annihilated before they could even penetrate 500 miles into the northwest mainland. It was even more likely that the Legion of Doom would not even be able to land. 1,000 Golden Condor Legions, equipped with Phoenix-grade missiles and medium-sized crystal group crossbows, could destroy tens of thousands. How many would it take to destroy the hundreds of thousands of Black Condor Legions in the Vulture Palace? 20,000? 30,000? How many aerial legions of the Council of Light were equipped with group crossbows and small rocket launchers? A full 100,000. Therefore, the Council of Light was now completely fearless of the Black Condor legions. They just could not bear to destroy everything. Because of these 200,000 Black Condors, the number of ace aerial legions of the Council of Light could instantly increase by tenfold. The way of war was completely different. The city lord of the Queen's new city, this ferocious female Naga general, looked at the half-ruined city, the countless half-human race soldiers whose bodies could not even be found, and the corpses of the dark bats all over the ground. She was instantly enraged. Yang Dingtian, you despicable person, shooting arrows in the air and firing cannons on the sea. What kind of ability is that? Hiding the head and showing the tail is not what a hero should do. If you are so capable, put your army on the ground, and let everyone fight face to face. I will show you the power of the Naga Empire. Your army will definitely be smashed to pieces. Faced with such foolish words, Yang Dingtian did not even bother to refute. At this point, more than 80% of the Naga Empire's army in the southern barbarian continent had been annihilated. The remaining 20% were all behind the city, where the cannons could not reach. Moreover, most of them were cavalry, mainly the demonic wolf cavalry, the blood leopard cavalry, and the barbarian bull cavalry. The Naga Empire originally wanted to use these 100,000 cavalry as the final killing machine, waiting for the Council of Light's army to land, so that they could determine the outcome of the battle. However, the Council of Light's way of fighting was completely incomprehensible to the Naga Empire. Before they landed, they had completely destroyed the city. Millions of astonishing cannons and incendiary bombs instantly wiped out the hundreds of thousands of powerful half-human race soldiers from the ground. Now the Naga Empire was only left with this last trump card, the 100,000 demonic beast cavalry. The commander on the battlefield, Zhuo Qingqi, suddenly waved the flag signal. Following his command, Li Muqiu said, "Whoosh whoosh 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 whoosh." One by one black dots suddenly rushed into the sky from the warships. A total of 10,000 golden condors rushed into the sky and charged toward the demonic beast cavalry of the Naga Empire behind the city. Suddenly, the entire sky was densely filled with the golden condors. There was only one warrior on each of the golden condor legions' backs, and the rest were all square objects. All of them were incendiary bombs, and they were poisonous fire incendiary bombs. When they burned, not only could they not be extinguished, but they would also release poisonous smoke. Therefore, these 10,000 golden condors and warriors were all wearing special gas masks. The 10,000 golden condors quickly flew over the demonic beast cavalry of the Naga Empire. The 100,000 heavy cavalry completely covered the sky and earth, and even birds could not cross them. They covered dozens of miles. Therefore, there was basically no need to aim. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Countless poisonous fire incendiary bombs suddenly fell from the backs of the 10,000 golden condors like raindrops. The demonic beast cavalry of the Naga Empire on the ground was shocked when they saw this, and they immediately fled in all directions. However, it was useless. After countless poisonous fire incendiary bombs fell to the ground, boom 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 boom, they suddenly exploded, and then the area within dozens of meters was instantly engulfed by green flames. Each incendiary bomb was a huge wall of fire. Tens of thousands of poisonous fire incendiary bombs exploded at the same time. Suddenly, the area within dozens of miles was turned into a sea of fire. These poisonous fires were very, very terrifying. Once touched, there was no way to extinguish them, and they would continue to burn. Even if they were wearing armor, they would be directly burned through alive. Even if the flames were only the size of a palm, they could not be extinguished. They would directly burn into the flesh, burning into the body. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The Golden Condor army was constantly hovering in the air. Countless incendiary bombs were completely like raindrops, constantly falling to the ground. Yang Dingtian could be sure that the incendiary bombs dropped by the Council of Light's Golden Condor armies, attack this time far exceeded the scale of the U.S. Air Force's air raid on Tokyo during World War II. And it was not just dozens of times, but hundreds of times. Such an astonishing scale of air raids within dozens of miles. That could be said to be completely barren. No matter how powerful the Naga Empire's demonic beast cavalry was, it was impossible for them to escape. No matter how fast they were, they could not be faster than the golden condors. Moreover, a poisonous fire incendiary bomb fell, and the area within dozens of meters was all covered in flames. Within hundreds of meters there was all poisonous smoke. Each golden condor threw down not one or two, but dozens of them. Therefore, in the end of the battle, there was no movement on the battlefield at all, because the ground within dozens of miles was all covered in flames, and the area within hundreds of miles was all covered in thick smoke. Under such a carpet attack of poisonous fire incendiary bombs, it was impossible for any of the demonic beast legions to survive. In half an hour, the 10,000-strong Golden Condor army had thrown down more than 500,000 poisonous fire incendiary bombs, which were tens of thousands of tons. Then, following Zhuo Qingqi's order, all the Golden Condor army turned around and whistled back. One by one, they landed on the large warships in an orderly manner. That's right, Yang Dingtian's chaotic world's version of the aircraft carrier battle group had been completely formed into an army. In terms of scale and number, it had completely defeated the United States aircraft carrier battle group. Even if all the aircraft carriers on the Earth's plane were added together, there were not as many aircraft carriers as the Council of Light. After the Golden Condor army withdrew, Song Chunhua suddenly flew into the sky, and then whistled. Then from a special warship, a beautiful living phoenix flew out. It was a heavenly fired demonic phoenix that was dozens of meters in size. This thing had been devouring magma in the crack of the northwest continent for several years. It had devoured all the magma in the crack of the northwest continent for thousands of miles. And now it had completely become a behemoth. It whistled, flew to the battlefield, and plunged into the raging fire. It was not here to kill, but to clean up the battlefield. Devour like crazy. Wherever it passed, all the green poisonous fire was completely devoured. Although the fire was poisonous, it did not reject it. Those flames that could not be extinguished completely disappeared after being devoured by it. And even the ground instantly became cold. In just a quarter of an hour, the poisonous fire on the ground for dozens of miles was completely devoured by it. Only a little green seeped out of its body from the fiery red. Its body also grew from dozens of meters to hundreds of meters in size. After devouring, it returned to the army of the Council of Light, and became smaller and smaller. In the end, it was less than a meter in size and landed on Song Chunhua's shoulder. At this point, the battle of the southern barbarian continent was over. The million-strong army of the Naga Empire, in the southern barbarian continent, was completely wiped out. This was a true annihilation. The entire process of the battle was completely over in less than half a day. As for the million-strong army of the Council of Light, only a little more than 10,000 troops were mobilized. Other than the crazy bombardment at the beginning, only the Air Force was mobilized. The ground troops were not mobilized at all. Not only that, but all the ace troops were also not mobilized. Even so, the Council of Light still fought a battle with close to zero casualties. In fact, this battle still felt like using a cannon to kill a mosquito. There was no need to use so much strength at all. However, Yang Dingtian saw this battle as a live-fire exercise, and they were getting closer and closer to the Great War of Extinction. This was a very precious live-fire exercise. Facts had proven that the Council of Light's new way of warfare, the air dominance tactics and artillery coverage tactics proposed by Yang Dingtian, were very, very effective. Especially in large-scale battles, their power was endless. This proved that in the new era of warfare, the army of the Council of Light had earth-shattering combat power. Finally, taking advantage of the aftermath of the shocking victory, Yang Dingtian directly ordered the battleships to approach the southern barbarian continent, and the army to disembark. Immediately, under the shocked and unwilling gazes of the people in the Vulture Palace, the million-strong army of the Council of Light landed in the southern barbarian continent. From now on, the last piece of land in the human countries was completely in the hands of the Council of Light. Chapter 886. Seeing that the Council of Light's army was about to land on the southern barbarian continent, Wuxia was anxious. He stepped forward and said, "Your Excellency Yang Dingtian, I'm very grateful for your help in eliminating the Naga Empire's invading army. In that case, you should leave the rest to the Spirit Vulture Palace." Yang Dingtian glanced at him and said, "Most of the Naga Empire's army has been eliminated. However, the Naga Empire doesn't just have the Queen's new city in the southern barbarian continent. There are many castles and half-human soldiers left, as well as countless half-human slaves. How can I just give up like this? Of course, I have to completely eliminate the Naga Empire's forces in the southern barbarian continent." Wuxia said, "Leave this to us." Yang Dingtian said, "If I leave it to you, will you attack the Naga Empire's army?" "Of course," Wuxia said. "As long as you withdraw your army, I'll find a way to completely eliminate the Naga Empire's military power." Yang Dingtian immediately said, "Good, it's very good that you have this ambition." Then, Yang Dingtian went directly to the Vulture Palace's Black Vulture army and pointed at one of the Vulture Palace experts. "You're called Spirit Crane?" This was a middle-aged man. He was slightly startled and said, "Yes, I'm Spirit Crane." Yang Dingtian knew this person. The Council of Light's intelligence had highlighted this person's importance. First, his fiancée had been snatched away by Spirit Rhinoceros as a concubine, and his right arm had been broken at that time. Therefore, this person had a lot of resentment toward Wuxia. Moreover, after his arm was broken by Spirit Rhinoceros, he was directly expelled from the position of the third commander of the Black Vulture army and exiled to the southern barbarian continent to catch savages. It could be said that he was extremely down and out. Therefore, people from the Council of Light had already started to contact him early on, preparing to instigate him to defect. However, before the instigation really started, Wu Daozi took over. After Wu Daozi took over, he began a purge, promoting Wuxia's haters and opponents. This Spirit Crane was one of the first few names on the list. Of course, he had immediately pledged his loyalty to Wu Daozi, and thus became the third general of the Black Vulture Legion, in charge of 10,000 Black Vultures. After this Spirit Crane regained his position, he had publicly expressed his dissatisfaction with Vulture and Wuxia many times. Furthermore, he had wantonly roped in high-ranking officers who were dissatisfied with Wuxia in the Black Vulture Corps. Therefore, no matter if it was Wuxia or Lingjiu, they both hated him to the bone. Daozi was finished, and Wuxia was back in power. He was definitely going to retaliate. Basically, he would not be able to survive. Since Wuxia wanted to destroy him, Yang Dingtian would protect him. Yang Dingtian patted him on the shoulder and said, "Old Palace Master Wuxia said that he wanted to help the Council of Light Legion eliminate the remnants of the Naga Empire. I think you are suitable. Lead your 10,000 Black Vulture Legion and help the Council of Light eliminate the remnants of the Naga Empire." Spirit Crane was stunned, and then he immediately understood that this was his best and only chance to save his life. He immediately nodded loudly and said, "Yes. Return to the team," Yang Dingtian said. Following Yang Dingtian's order, Spirit Crane led his 10,000 Black Vulture Legion and immediately flew toward the battlefield. Wuxia was so angry that his whole body trembled. This was too much. This was too much. Yang Dingtian actually tried to poach him in front of everyone. He immediately said coldly, "Who dares to go? Without my order, who dares to go? Everyone stop. If you dare to take another step forward, you will be executed immediately." Yang Dingtian's eyes narrowed. He slowly said to Wuxia, "Wuxia, you are not the master of the Vulture Palace yet. And even if you do, you will hand over the Vulture Palace Master to Ling Chuzi." Then, Yang Dingtian raised the Vulture Palace Master's token in his hand and said to Spirit Crane, "You can enter the battlefield." Spirit Crane was not a fool. He knew that even if he stopped now he would die. He immediately gritted his teeth and led his Black Vulture Legion to join the Council of Light Legion. Of course, a small part of his 10,000 Black Vulture Legion did not choose to enter the battlefield. Instead, they stayed in the air. However, Yang Dingtian did not care. Spirit Crane was just an example. One must know that after Wu Daozi took over, he cleaned up the entire Vulture Palace. All the key positions were replaced. Therefore, after Wulingzi regained power this time, he would definitely clean up again. When everyone was in danger, Yang Dingtian would become their life-saving straw. Wulingzi was so angry that his whole body trembled. He pointed at Yang Dingtian and said coldly, "You don't go too far." Yang Dingtian turned around and ignored Wulingzi. With such a great victory, who could stop the Council of Light Legion from landing? It was impossible, unless Wulingzi ordered the entire Black Vulture Legion to attack. But would Wulingzi dare to do so? Not even if he was given 10 guts. Moreover, even if Wulingzi dared to do so, these Black Vulture Legion officers would not dare to do so. They would be courting death. On the contrary, the Black Vulture Legion officers who were originally in danger felt lucky. The Council of Light Legion's army entering the southern barbarian continent might be a good thing. Oh no, this was definitely a good thing. The landing of 1 million soldiers would take a very long time. Of the 2 million soldiers on the battlefield, only the 1st Legion of Zhongjing would return to Zhongjing. The rest would be stationed in the southern barbarian continent. In particular, the southern barbarian continent's army, including the fleet, would be stationed in the southern barbarian continent. This was because the southern barbarian continent's defense zone was established for only one purpose, and that was the southern barbarian continent. Once the southern barbarian continent was obtained, the southern barbarian continent would be meaningless. This was because there would be no enemies in the entire south. As for Yang Dingtian, he did not leave the southern barbarian continent and return to Zhongjing. Instead, he entered the Vulture Palace again. This was because he was going to preside over the great ceremony of bringing chaos to the Vulture Palace. He was going to use a grand ceremony to return the position of Vulture Palace Lord to Ling Chuzi. Of course, whether it was Wulingzi or Ling Chuzi, they did not welcome Yang Dingtian to preside over this ceremony. This was because their hearts were following the evil ways, not Yang Dingtian. However, damn it, the Vulture Palace Lord's token was in Yang Dingtian's hands. Without this token, the position would not be legitimate. Therefore, they could only hold their noses and let Yang Dingtian preside over this great hall. Moreover, Wulingzi was a weak-hearted person. Under strong pressure, he would half refuse and half accept anything. Of course, the Vulture Palace Lord's token had been destroyed in the battle between Yang Dingtian and Wu Daozi. The one in Yang Dingtian's hands was a fake, but it could also be passed off as the real thing. The Council of Light had been plotting to take over the Vulture Palace for a long time. Therefore, the Warlock team had long made many fake Vulture Palace tokens. In fact, this token was very difficult to imitate. The Warlock team of several hundred people had used countless crystals and methods. Who knew how many treasures had been scrapped? Until recently, they had barely managed to make a fake token that could pass off as the real thing. However, they still could not achieve 100% consistency. However, since the real token had been destroyed, this 99.9% of the token had become the real thing. Moreover, Wulingzi was a petty person. He was worried that Yang Dingtian would hand over the position of Vulture Palace Lord to Spirit Rabbit. That would be troublesome. Therefore, the whole process at the Great Hall seemed a little funny and strange. Ling Chuzi had no enthusiasm for this position, because even if he sat on the Vulture Palace Lord's seat, he would be a puppet. Wulingzi was a little excited. The power of Vulture Palace had finally returned to his hands. However, this Great Hall was actually presided over by Yang Dingtian. He was really sick of it. One must know that in the past, Yang Dingtian was nothing. He could crush him with one finger. He would not even look at him in the eye. Now 5 or 6 people had climbed over his head. However, this did not hinder Yang Dingtian's enthusiasm at all. In this great hall, the Council of Light had given him a lot of face. All the higher-ups of the Council of Light's high command, the sovereign, and the city lord were all present. There were dozens of people, which completely accounted for half of the people present. Moreover, these higher-ups of the Council of Light were very enthusiastic. Almost everyone held the hands of the higher-ups of Vulture Palace, expressing their infinite closeness. The meaning behind their words was very clear. They were all one family, and they all worked for the Council of Light. They must not be estranged. In Yang Dingtian's speech, he directly pulled the Vulture Palace into the highest ranks of the Council of Light. Moreover, he emphasized again that Ling Chuzi's position in the Council of Light's high command was second only to Yang Dingtian, Dongfang Minmi, and Zhuo Qingqi. He was directly ranked fourth, the fourth big shot in the world. Moreover, Yang Dingtian very generously handed over many important positions. For example, the southern barbarian continent's defense zone was to be readjusted. The highest commander appointed was a great elder of the Vulture Palace. Many important positions in Zhongjing and the western continent were also handed over to some of the higher-ups of the Vulture Palace. Half of the important positions in the southern barbarian continent's defense zone were handed over to the higher-ups of the Vulture Palace. All of a sudden, the higher-ups of the Vulture Palace were both surprised and delighted. They were surprised, of course, because of Yang Dingtian's strategy of sowing discord. This was undoubtedly a strategy of sowing discord, especially when Wolingzi was so narrow-minded. Moreover, not long ago, these people had abandoned Wolingzi and pledged their loyalty to Wu Daozi. Therefore, this strategy of sowing discord was bound to succeed. They were delighted, of course, because the positions given by Yang Dingtian were very, very important. Previously, because of Wolingzi's closed-door policy, the higher-ups of the Vulture Palace were basically empty positions. Their range of activity was limited to a few hundred miles outside the Vulture Palace, and they did not have many subordinates. Therefore, they did not have much power. Now Yang Dingtian waved his pen, and each of them had at least 100,000 troops, hundreds of miles of territory, and millions of people under their command. That's right. Yang Dingtian also directly announced a policy at the ceremony, which was the policy of naturalization. It was a pity that the land of thousands of miles in the southern barbarian continent was uninhabited. Therefore, the surviving barbarians must be protected. They could no longer be used to feed the black vultures. They must be allowed to cultivate and return to the embrace of civilization. Not only that, but more than 10 million people from the central continent must be immigrated to the southern barbarian continent. The southern barbarian continent must be built into a rich and prosperous paradise. This explained that the Vulture Palace would truly have thousands of miles of territory, tens of millions of people, dozens of cities, and endless wealth. Yang Dingtian's words completely swayed the hearts of the higher-ups of the Vulture Palace present. Damn! In the future, each of them would be a city lord, in charge of 100,000 troops and millions of people. Then, what was the point of being an elder of the Vulture Palace now? They had no more than a few thousand subordinates. Those who were quick-witted immediately realized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Don't give Wolingzi a chance to purge them. Directly lean towards the Council of Light. Of course, Wolingzi and the others wanted to rely on evil ways. They feared the evil ways and felt that Yang Dingtian would undoubtedly lose in the Great War of Extinction. However, the ordinary higher-ups of the Vulture Palace did not know so much. They only saw how terrifying the combat power of the Council of Light was in the southern barbarian continent battle. They were completely invincible and undefeatable. In the face of Yang Dingtian's attempts to sow discord, rope and poach, Wolingzi's heart was filled with hatred, but he still endured it. There will be a day when you, Yang Dingtian, will leave. When you leave, it will be time for me to raise my butcher's knife and cleanse you. Therefore, before the banquet was halfway through, Wolingzi left with the excuse that he was not feeling well. As soon as he was gone, the Council of Light's attempts to rope in and bribe became even more blatant. It directly made the higher-ups of the Council of Light excited. In the face of all this, Ling Chuzi did not have any reaction, and Yang Dingtian did not try to rope him in. This person's heart was completely gloomy, and there was nothing that could arouse his hot-bloodedness. This person was basically useless. Of course, such a person would make a good puppet. Since he could be Wolingzi's puppet, he might as well be the Council of Light's puppet. The banquet went on until late at night. Throughout the entire process, Yang Dingtian had been concerned about one person, and that was of course Spirit Rabbit. He had sent many people to look for her, but in the end, they did not find her. because her appearance was needed at this banquet. When Yang Dingtian and her appeared as husband and wife, they could make the higher-ups who were loyal to Wu Daozi feel at ease and have the motivation to continue to be loyal. One had to know that Spirit Rabbit's status in the Vulture Palace was really like an angel. Halfway through the banquet, Ling Bai found the Spirit Rabbit in a forest. She had been there alone for a few hours. Yang Dingtian saw Spirit Rabbit in the small room at the back. She did not cry, but her little face was pale. In order to reassure the higher-ups who are loyal to your grandfather, the result will be better if you appear with me. Yang Dingtian. Of course, all of this is up to you. Now that you are completely free, no matter what decision you make, I will support you. Spirit Rabbit finally raised her head and said, Sect Master Yang Dingtian, I don't blame you really. I can imagine that even if grandfather loses in the duel, he will definitely not fulfill his promise and hand over the position of Vulture Palace Master. Instead, he will think of ways to take revenge even more crazily. So, his death may be the best result. Then, Spirit Rabbit finally could not hold back her tears and said, But this is only the rational answer. And everyone can't always be rational. They are often swayed by emotions, so I'm really sorry. I can't accept all of this calmly, although I don't blame you. But it is really difficult for me to maintain a close relationship with you. Just now, I was alone in the forest and thought for a long time, just to persuade myself to let go of my obsession, but I really can't do it. Taking a deep breath, Spirit Rabbit said, Of course, I can appear with you to appease the higher-ups of the Vulture Palace. But after that, please forgive me. I may need to leave the Vulture Palace. Yang Dingtian instinctively wanted to tell Spirit Rabbit that Wu Daozi was not dead, but was completely exiled to the Death Continent. But soon he immediately gave up this idea, because if this secret was leaked, the consequences would be unimaginable. Dongli had the void-splitting fire, so he could also go to the Death Continent and take Wu Daozi out. Once Wu Daozi was taken out, how crazy would he be? How unscrupulous would his revenge be? Even the heavens did not know. The consequences were completely unimaginable. This Wu Daozi was extremely paranoid, and even a little perverted. Even if there were evil ways of not killing, he would kill Yang Dingtian. If he was allowed to come out of the Death Continent, he would definitely use the most cruel means to retaliate against Yang Dingtian's family. With his half-step cultivation, who could stop him? So, to ensure that nothing went wrong, Yang Dingtian still needed to find Dongli. Even if he could not kill him, he had to completely cripple him. Yang Dingtian knew that if he told the truth that Wu Daozi was not dead, then Spirit Rabbit would be able to put down her heart and would not leave him. After taking a few deep breaths, Yang Dingtian still did not say it. He just said gently, Then there's no need. Don't make it difficult for yourself to do something you don't want to do. Although you are young, you are very smart. I believe that the decision you made must be smart. So, I respect your decision. No matter where you go, I hope you stay true to your heart and pay attention to your safety. Spirit Rabbit's tears fell, and she nodded and said, I will. Thank you, Sect Master Yang Dingtian. Then she said, Then I want to leave now. Yang Dingtian nodded and said, Okay. Suddenly, Ling Bai walked out and said, Sect Master Yang, I want to go with Rabbit. Yang Dingtian was stunned. He did not know why Ling Bai had such an idea, but thinking that she was not comfortable in the Vulture Palace, she was also not comfortable in the central capital. So he nodded. Ling Bai's cultivation was high, and Spirit Rabbit was smart. The two of them would be much safer together. So, Ling Bai and Spirit Rabbit took advantage of the night and left the Vulture Palace. Then, a familiar figure came in and came behind Yang Dingtian. Like a snake, a small hot hand reached into Yang Dingtian's clothes. Ignore them. I will be your secret lover. This familiar voice became hoarse and seductive. Chapter 887. There was no doubt that this woman was Vulture. Tonight, she had been staring at Yang Dingtian. And even when Wu Lingzi left, she did not pay much attention to him. And the departure of the Spirit Rabbit made him even happier. I promised you, as long as you can help me get rid of Wu Daozi, I will be your secret lover. Vulture's little hand caressed Yang Dingtian's face as she said in a hoarse voice. This voice reminded Yang Dingtian that Vulture was no longer a 16 or 17-year-old girl. She was almost 23 years old. But I really didn't expect that you could kill him. I didn't even dream of it. Vulture said. In fact, I didn't have any hope of killing him. A demi-saint with a second-class evil spirit is almost immortal. You actually managed to kill him. This result is too good, too wonderful. Yang Dingtian finally opened his mouth and said slowly, I killed him. It has nothing to do with you. I just thought that I killed him for the benefit of the Tiando League. Vulture said, Yes, I know, but so what? I have already sworn in my heart that I will be the lover of whoever can get me out of this hell. Yang Dingtian said, Don't you hate me to the bone? You can compromise with anyone in the world, but not me, right? Vulture said, People are childish and stupid sometimes, but people will always grow up. Compared to survival, everything else is useless. Don't you see my great-grandfather? In order to survive, he can do anything, endure any shame? Yang Dingtian was silent for a moment and said, He is no longer a normal person. Why do you want to be like him? Hee. Vulture suddenly laughed and said, I am his daughter, of course I want to be like him. Then Vulture said, Well, let's not waste this beautiful night. Yang Dingtian held her hand and said slowly, What do you want? Vulture thought for a while and said, I want to have a supreme position in the Vulture Palace. Next, I want to become the mistress of the Vulture Palace. Yang Dingtian shook his head and sneered. Don't you know that the hearts of your people in the Vulture Palace are already gone? I know, Vulture said. But with your support, I don't believe anyone would dare to disagree. I know that the old ancestor's backer is no longer reliable. Yang Dingtian. What about Dongli? Isn't he your new backer? He has already disappeared for a long time. Vulture said. Moreover, he is no longer the real Dongli. His will and mind have been completely controlled by a first-class evil spirit. Yang Dingtian. Dongli has a first-class evil spirit, so he can give you a second-class evil spirit. With a second-class evil spirit, you can break through to the Grandmaster level. Why not? Vulture's breath suddenly stagnated, and then her hot little hands became cold, full of infinite resentment. This lunatic, this pervert. I have paid a great price for a second-class evil spirit, and suffered humiliation. But in the end his answer was still no, and he still refused. But he turned around and begged Dishi Bian to have a second-class evil spirit. But he was disdainfully rejected by Dishi Bian. Dishi Bian? Yang Dingtian was stunned. Yes, Dishi Bian. Vulture said. My great-grandfather dreamed of having a second-class evil spirit, so that he could live forever, and have an invincible immortal body. But it was useless even if he knelt until his knees were broken. Not only did he refuse to give it to Princess Mudan, but he also refused to give it to Dongli. Even if he gave me his biological daughter, it was useless. Dongli, that bastard, even refused to give me a second-class evil spirit. Yang Dingtian suddenly smiled and said, You want to be a now, but what if one day Dongli comes back and wants to give you a second-class evil spirit? What will you do? Vulture suddenly fell silent. Of course, she wanted to say that she would definitely ignore Dongli and be his lover wholeheartedly. But when she said this sentence, not only did Yang Dingtian not believe it, but even Vulture herself did not believe it. Not to mention the future. If Dongli said that he wanted to give her a second-class evil spirit now, she would do anything no matter what. She now deeply understood that only her own strength was true strength, and all the backers were unreliable. But it was too slow to become strong by herself. She really did not have the patience or courage. In fact, she had lost her patience after the failure to fight for the Netherworld Ghost Fire last time. Therefore, the evil spirit energy became her only trump card to become strong. Who knows what will happen in the future? Maybe Dongli is already dead. Isn't it good to enjoy the present? Vulture kissed Yang Dingtian's neck and said, You should know that although I have been tortured, I am still pure and flawless, because Dongli has been castrated by you. In fact, I am very curious. If the evil spirit energy can bring the dead back to life, why can't Dongli recover his ability as a man? Yang Dingtian grabbed her hand again. In fact, although his heart could not bear another care and love. However, he didn't really care about the fact that there was another woman in his house. In particular, bringing Vulture into the house would directly bring huge benefits. However, Vulture's twisted mentality and greed for instant success made him completely flinch. If such a woman entered the house would definitely be restless. Young Dingtian, don't pretend anymore. You must have special feelings for me. Vulture chuckled and said, I now understand the mentality of a man very well. A wife is not as good as a concubine, and a concubine is not as good as a mistress. And I used to be very close to you and regarded you as a brother, but later I betrayed you. If this kind of woman can be with you, because it can satisfy some unknown hobby in your heart. As it spoke, Vulture stuck out its tongue and licked Yang Dingtian's ear. I'm not as perverted as you think. Yang Dingtian grabbed Vulture's hand and pushed Vulture away and walked straight out. Yang Dingtian, don't be pretentious. All men are the same, Vulture said loudly from behind. After the ceremony, Yang Dingtian still did not leave. He did not sleep for the second half of the night. He kept thinking about Vulture's problem. How should he deal with Vulture's problem? It was impossible to keep Vulture. If it was a few years ago he could still change it. But now it was completely fixed and twisted. It was impossible to change it. Then should he kill it? According to Bolu, he could either keep it in his house or kill it. But now it seemed that killing it was impossible. If he killed Vulture, it would completely enrage Wuxia. He might really do something desperate. At that time, it would be troublesome if he fought with the Council of Light. Could not keep it in his house. Could not kill it. Then what should he do? If she was allowed to stay in Vulture Palace, would she be able to stir up trouble? He would definitely encourage Wuxia to purge and retaliate against the higher-ups of Vulture Palace. At that time, these higher-ups would have to rely more on the Council of Light. So it seemed that Vulture had some effect again. Then, it might be more beneficial to keep it as it was. In the following time, Wuxia had been waiting for Yang Dingtian to leave, so that he could purge the higher-ups of Vulture Palace. However, Yang Dingtian did not leave. He basically stayed in Vulture Palace every day. Not only did he not leave, but many of the higher-ups of the Council of Light still stayed in Vulture Palace as guests. They were not polite at all. The work of drawing them in and dividing them had been in progress. Wuxia was burning with anxiety, but there was nothing he could do. He did not have the guts to purge and kill people in front of Yang Dingtian. At the same time, the Council of Light's efforts to draw the Black Vulture Army to their side became even more intense. More and more Black Vulture Army officers led their troops to join the Council of Light's army. In fact, under the Devil Dragon Army's massacre, the remaining forces of the Snake People Empire in the southern barbarian continent were quickly wiped out. The remaining half-human slaves had also been released. They also hated Queen Hyexian to the core. Furthermore, they did not want to return to the Snake People Empire. Going back would mean death. So, Yang Dingtian made the decision to let these half-human slaves become the first batch of immigrants in the southern barbarian continent. Many people were worried about this order. They were afraid that it would cause racial conflict. However, after seeing these slaves, they gave up on this idea. This was because all the half-human slaves were a very docile race. Furthermore, they had characteristics very similar to humans. Most importantly, their appearances were not bad, especially the Foxman race and the more human-like Leopardman race. They were very beautiful. Therefore, perhaps the integration of humans and half-human races could start in the southern barbarian continent. It had to be known that most half-human races could reproduce with humans. Furthermore, the genes of the offspring would be more obvious. If this continued, the characteristics of the half-human race would gradually disappear after a few generations. After the Snake People Empire's remaining army was wiped out, all the slaves were released and settled down. After these millions of half-human slaves obtained land, houses and food, they immediately became the Council of Light's greatest supporters. Previously, these millions of half-human slaves had built Queen's new city. There were also many villages and towns. These intact villages and towns, as well as many castles, could be used directly the Council of Light's army could be stationed there. As for Queen's new city, it was basically in ruins. Only less than half of it was intact. Then, the next step was to rebuild a large city on these ruins. When the time came, this city would become the largest city in the southern middle continent. Furthermore, a large port would be built to serve as the headquarters of the southern middle continent's fleet. After the war ended, other than gathering materials from all over the place, countless materials from Zhongjing, Xijing, and other places had been loaded onto large ships. Countless craftsmen also boarded the ships and headed to the southern barbarian continent from all directions. They were prepared to rebuild the southern barbarian continent as quickly as possible. The naming rights of this large city that was about to be rebuilt were given to Yang Dingtian. He racked his brains and named it Southern Barbarian Bright City. This name was rather ordinary, but at least it represented a certain characteristic. It represented that the southern barbarian continent had moved from barbarism to civilization. Of course, the Council of Light's millions of soldiers were already stationed in the southern barbarian continent. They had also incited the Black Vulture Corps to rebel. However, there was still a long time before they could completely annex the southern barbarian continent and the Vulture Palace. At the very least, all the masters and above in the Vulture Palace had to pledge their loyalty to the Council of Light and isolate Wuxia. At the very least, all the Black Vulture Corps had to enter the Council of Light's formation and be reorganized. Moreover, the Council of Light's forces had already completely surrounded the Vulture Palace. This was a very long process. It would take at least half a year. At the very beginning, Yang Dingtian had remained in the Vulture Palace to prevent Wuxia's purge process. Wuxia was burning with anxiety. His expression became more and more unsightly. However, the higher-ups of the Vulture Palace had also slacked off because of this. They were also less enthusiastic about the Council of Light's instigation. Moreover, the asking price was getting higher and higher. In the end, they had basically proposed that the southern barbarian continent would be directly under the control of the Vulture Palace's Elders Guild. Moreover, they would be directly infeft with territories, not just the position of city lord. Dongfang Minmi sternly proposed that the Council of Light had already stopped infecting feudal lords. Therefore, he told the Vulture Palace's Elders Guild not to have such extravagant hopes. However, the Vulture Palace's Elders Guild believed that the southern barbarian continent was different from other places. It had never belonged to the Council of Light before. Therefore, it should be given special circumstances and special treatment. Therefore, the negotiations between the Council of Light and the Vulture Palace's Elders Guild fell into a stalemate. Moreover, under the influence of the Elders Guild, the instigation of the Black Vulture Corps also fell into a slow pace. The number of Black Vulture Corps defecting to the Council of Light decreased. Obviously, the Vulture Palace's Elders Guild gradually calmed down after not feeling the threat of Wuxia's purge. Once they were at ease, their greed also rose. They no longer completely treated Yang Dingtian as a life-saving straw. In the end, the entire negotiation came to an end. This group of people is really insatiable, Qin Wancho said angrily. Previously, they only wanted to cling to our thighs to save their lives. Now that they have saved their lives, they are actually asking for more. Each of them wants a few hundred miles, or even 1,000 miles of direct territory. They even said that the southern barbarian continent's matters can only be managed by the southern barbarian continent's own people. Dream on, Song Xiao said angrily. If you ask me, what's there to talk about? Nothing is as practical as fighting. Let's just fight. Yang Dingtian said. Fighting is easy. Destroying the Vulture Palace's Elders Guild is also easy. However, unless it is absolutely necessary, we must not force Wuxia into a corner. Once the fish dies and the net splits, the consequences will be very serious. At this moment, a demon eagle flew into the southern barbarian city's castle. It was Yin Junu, sect master. Yali has returned to Cloud Sky City. She brought back important information about the Snakeman Empire. It is very important and requires you to review it personally, Yin Junu said. Yang Dingtian stood up and said, If that's the case, I will return to Cloud Sky City. Let these greedy people in the Vulture Palace see the reality and feel Walingzi's butcher's knife. Then, Yang Dingtian rode on the Demon Eagle King and flew towards Cloud Sky City. Chapter 888. Yang Dingtian returned to Cloud Sky City as fast as he could and immediately met Yaoli. The first sentence that Yaoli said almost made Yang Dingtian stumble and almost fall to the ground. Hai Xian's only disciple, who is also your wife, Huang Yu, led the resistance army and hid in the Holy Valley. She expressed her disobedience to Queen Hai Xian and did not need to eat Queen Hai Xian's food. Her life has been very difficult. Yaoli said, "That's nothing. The key is she already has your child. She's already 4 years old and it's a daughter." Suddenly, Yang Dingtian was completely shocked. Huang Yu actually had a daughter. He actually had a daughter who was over 4 years old. Moreover, she had been suffering in the Holy Valley with Huang Yu, and he did not know at all. And Queen Hai Xian had never mentioned this matter? Shouldn't she be using this as a bargaining chip to threaten him? Immediately after, Yaoli continued, after Queen Hai Xian came to power, the purge of the original power class of the Naga Empire never stopped. It turned out that the 4 commanders and 16 generals, under the venomous queen, had all disappeared. They were replaced by new 9 marshals and 39 generals. Their cultivations all surpassed the previous 4 commanders. Yang Dingtian could not help but be shocked. He said, although the Naga race is stronger than humans, they also cultivate for a very long time. How did the Naga Empire produce so many limitless grandmasters in just a few years? Yaoli said, I found a forbidden area. That should be the reason why Queen Hai Xian and the other Naga race became so powerful. But I can't go in. There's a very, very powerful energy formation there. Other than Queen Hai Xian's lead, no one can enter. Yang Dingtian asked, that forbidden area, where is it? Yaoli said, in the center of the Dongli grassland, under an extremely huge lake. Yang Dingtian immediately realized that this was the place where the million-spirit demonic flame had bloomed. Queen Hai Xian actually placed this forbidden area there. Could it be that there was something special about it? Yaoli said, furthermore, Queen Hai Xian will be in this place most of the time. Furthermore, I also discovered that the current population of the Naga tribe has been reduced by half compared to Queen Poisa's time. Queen Hai Xian seems to have eliminated all unstable elements. Those who remained were all personally nurtured by her. They were all personally transformed by her and became extremely powerful. Yang Dingtian frowned. This meant that even if Yang Dingtian resurrected Queen Poisa, the higher-ups of the Naga Empire would still obey Queen Hai Xian's orders. Therefore, the only way to take back the Naga Empire was to kill Queen Hai Xian. Yang Dingtian asked, what do you think Queen Hai Xian's current cultivation is? Yaoli was silent for a moment, then shook her head and said, I don't know. Maybe it's very, very high. This Naga queen makes me tremble. In fact, I feel that she seems to be stronger than many experts in Little Western Paradise. Previously, Queen Poisa's body had been stolen by Yang Dingtian. In other words, Yang Dingtian could resurrect Queen Poisa at any time. However, Poisa refused. She said that Queen Hai Xian would definitely engrave her on the Naga astrolabe. Once she was resurrected, the gem that belonged to her on the astrolabe would light up. That way, Hai Xian would know that Poisa was not dead. In that case, she would go on a killing spree. She would rather kill 30,000 innocents than let one live. Yang Dingtian did not expect that there would be something like the Naga astrolabe. However, once Hai Xian knew that Queen Poisa was not dead, she would be in mortal danger and would do anything. Moreover, Queen Poisa's body could no longer be placed in Cloud Sky City. Queen Hai Xian would definitely be able to sense it. She could not be placed in the interspatial ring, because there was already a Naga Shuang in it. In the end, Yang Dingtian placed her in the safest place, which was the Liwater Manor, beside the demon mother of illusory spirits. That was the safest place, and no one could enter. Gigi, is the demon spirit mist robe and demon spirit black armor ready? Yang Dingtian asked. Yes, it's ready. Are you going to use it to curry favor with that lover again? Wu Maji fiddled with the demonic crystals that Yang Dingtian gave her and said, "Husband, this thing looks good, but it doesn't match our clothes at all." Yang Dingtian said, "Take off your outerwear and pants, let down your hair, and wear this demonic crystal. It will match very well." Wu Maji immediately did as she was told, and took off all her clothes. "You don't have to take them off completely. Leave your undergarments," Yang Dingtian said hurriedly. Then, Wu Maji was only left with the silk undergarments that Yang Dingtian had designed. Then, she let down her hair, and put on the crystal sunglasses that he gave her. She walked in front of the mirror and was stunned. So beautiful, so beautiful. It feels completely different from before," Wu Maji said in a trembling voice. Yang Dingtian was also stunned. A mixed-blood beauty in a bikini was right in front of him. She had such a devilish figure, such an enchanting face, and a natural seductive and domineering aura. God, this kind of beauty and sexiness could kill any supermodel on earth in seconds. Yang Dingtian's breathing immediately became heavy. Then in the next second, Yang Dingtian was pushed down. "Do you want the demonic Miss clothes? It's very simple. Let me change my clothes 3 shots for 1. Wu Maji pressed onto Yang Dingtian's body, and bit onto his lips with her fragrant little mouth, as she spoke viciously. Immediately, Yang Dingtian was completely speechless. This seductress was truly capable of saying anything. Vixen emoji always did what she said. Yang Dingtian wanted to change into 2 sets of clothes. One was the demonic mist clothes, and the other was the demonic black armor. Also, she said that the demonic black armor was better, so the price was higher. So, if little Ah Cho didn't want to stick to his mother again, Yang Dingtian would still be in hell and heaven. "Mother, mother!" Little Ah Cho kept shouting outside. "What are you shouting for?" Emoji, who was crazily squeezing Yang Dingtian, couldn't help but shout. Little Ah Cho didn't reply. Still, "Mother, mother, mother." So annoying, so annoying. Emoji laid down her beautiful devilish body and fiercely bit Yang Dingtian's chest. "It's all your fault. You made me give birth to this annoying person. My feelings are all gone from his shouting. Mother, mother, mother." Little Ah Cho was like a repeater as he kept shouting. Coming, coming, little ancestor." Wu Maji flipped over and impatiently put on her clothes. And Yang Dingtian quickly escaped from the back door. If he didn't leave now, he would really be squeezed dry. When Wu Maji hurriedly put on her clothes and opened the door to carry little Ah Cho. Who knew, when little Ah Cho saw his mother, he hugged his mother's thigh and said, "Mother, I love you." Then he ran away without a trace. Emoji immediately gritted her teeth and shook her head with all her might. What kind of tricks are these brats playing? Very quickly, little Ah Cho ran into Yin Yan's room and stretched out his hand. "Mother Yin Yan, I've already called my mother out." Yin Yan carried little Ah Cho and placed a cute snowflake candy in his hand. Then, she kissed his chubby little face and said, "And baby, little Ah Cho is so obedient, so great." If Emoji knew that her own son was bribed by a candy to ruin her and Yang Dingtian's happy occasion, she would definitely explode in anger. Yang Dingtian was lying in the hot water. Yin Yan bathed him while giving him a massage. Compared to alluring, Wu Maji is really a vixen. Yin Yan grumbled. "Who said she isn't?" Yang Dingtian said, "You still like her the most. Don't think that I don't know." Yin Yan pinched Yang Dingtian and said, "Although you also want to be fair and love everyone, the one you love the most is Wu Maji." Yang Dingtian said, "Who said so? The one I love the most is you." "You're lying," Yin Yan said. "It's true," Yang Dingtian said. "My body loves Wu Maji the most, but my heart loves you the most." Yin Yan immediately beamed with joy. "Actually, it's not like I don't know how to act like a vixen like her. But I love you, and I'm the first wife. I have to be virtuous, and can't be so seductive. And that's reasonable." Yang Dingtian said, "You're the most virtuous among the vixens, and also the most vixen among the virtuous wives." Yin Yan was instantly elated. She kissed Yang Dingtian's lips and said, "Husband, where's Sister Ling Tuer? The matter at the Vulture Palace is already over. She should be in Cloud Sky City. This is her home," Yang Dingtian said. She has her own thoughts. Because of her grandfather's matter, she went out to relax. "She's gone, Yin Yan said. Do you want me to persuade her? Although we don't have many chances to meet, our relationship is very good. Yang Dingtian shook his head and said, she looks weak, but her will is very firm. It can't be changed. Yin Yin was silent for a moment, then said, Then, does that mean she's not your wife anymore? She's going to leave our family completely. Yang Dingtian nodded and said, it should be. It can only be blamed that the two of them are not fated enough. Moreover, leaving before love is deep. It won't hurt each other much. It's a relatively good ending. Yin Yin did not speak. She hugged Yang Dingtian's neck tightly and said softly, I don't envy their determination and intelligence at all. If someone wants to tear me away from you, then my whole body will be covered in blood, and then I won't be able to recover. I'll bleed to death. Yang Dingtian reached out and stroked her face, saying, me too. Yin Yin said, this time, you're going to the Naga Empire again, right? Yang Dingtian nodded. Will it be dangerous? How long will it take? Yin Yin asked. Yang Dingtian thought for a while and said, I'm not sure yet because I'm not sure if I should completely tear apart Queen Hai Xian. I haven't figured out her background yet. However, it shouldn't be too dangerous. She can't bear to kill me. I'm her only chance to have children. Yin Yin thought for a while and said, Then will she force you to have children with her? And then. She won't. Yang Dingtian said, she doesn't want to have children now because once she has children, her cultivation will stagnate or even drop. She's very greedy. She doesn't want to give up on having children, but she also doesn't want her cultivation to drop. Yin Yin said, people who are too greedy will not have a good ending. Yang Dingtian kissed her little mouth. This sentence was very ordinary, but it was definitely the truth. Wow, this is great, this is great. Yang Dingtian, I love you so much. I love you so much that I love you so much. Yaozi hugged Yang Dingtian's neck and jumped with all her might. She kissed him as if she didn't need money. Yang Dingtian tried his best to dodge, but he couldn't. In the end, Yaoli pulled her sister by the ear and took her away. Yaozi was so excited because Yang Dingtian had agreed to take her to the Naga Empire. He had even let her wear the Dark Spirit black armor and Dark Spirit mist cloak. As Yaoli pulled her by the ear, she said, Yang Dingtian, I've already decided not to like you because you have so many wives. However, now that you've given me the Dark Spirit mist cloak and Dark Spirit black armor, I've decided to like you again. Now Yang Dingtian was completely immune to her words. I'm borrowing them, not giving them away, Yang Dingtian said. Then I still love you, Yaozi said. However, it's not easy to take back anything that's in my hands. Yaoli looked at Yang Dingtian helplessly. She wanted him to reconsider whether it was a good idea to take this crazy girl to the Naga Empire. Don't worry. Although she's naive, lively, and a little wild, she's very smart. She won't be a burden at a critical moment, Yang Dingtian said. This was the truth. When Yaozi was in the Dark Realm, she had never been a burden at a critical moment. Whether it was escaping or fighting, she reacted quickly. Even when they were captured by Yao Ming, Yaozi wasn't the first one to be captured. Moreover, Yaozi was a rank 13 expert. Her cultivation was very high. She would be of great use to the Naga Empire. Yaoli nodded reluctantly. Then she said fiercely, when we go to the Naga Empire, listen to my orders. Otherwise I'll really beat you up. Do you hear me? I know. You're so annoying. You're my sister, not my mother. Be careful that you won't be able to get married in the future if you keep nagging like this, Yaozi said impatiently. Yaoli couldn't take it anymore. She pressed Yaozi down on her legs, locked her profound veins, and gave her a good spanking. Meanwhile, Yang Dingtian quickly left. It wouldn't be good to stay here and persuade them, but it wouldn't be good to not persuade them either. 15 minutes later, Yaoli and Yaozi came out. Both sides ignored each other. Yaozi covered her back and rode on the demon eagle. She complained to Yang Dingtian, you didn't help me when you saw me get beaten up. I hate you. Then, the three of them rode on the demon eagle and flew toward the Naga Empire. Chapter 889. The three demon eagles flew very high, completely exceeding the limit of the Snakemen Empire's aerial reconnaissance cavalry. But even so, when they were a few thousand miles away from the Snakeman Empire, the three immediately got off the demon eagles and dived into the sea, waiting for the sky to darken. The three demon eagles then returned to Cloud Sky City. After the sky darkened, the three flew to an altitude of 20 to 30,000 meters, directly using Xian's skill to fly, and entered the Snakeman Empire without anyone noticing. It had been almost 3 years since Yang Dingtian last came to the Snakeman Empire. Although it was night, the entire Dongli grassland had completely changed. It turned out that most of it was still covered by forests. At this time, countless forests had disappeared, replaced by countless castles. Looking from the sky, the ground was full of fire. The Snakeman Empire's crude forging factories and the shipyards by the sea were producing and manufacturing day and night. Like the Council of Light, everything in the Snakeman Empire since 2 to 3 years ago was to prepare for the future war. The war machine was turning to the extreme, but unlike the human countries, the population under the rule of the Yang Dingtian Council of Light was in the billions. The Snakeman Empire spanned tens of thousands of miles, and all the half-human clan added together barely exceeded 100 million. While the Council of Light was preparing for the war, most of the people were living better and better lives. Not only did the number of cannons, ships, and armor increase, but the increase in grain, meat, fruits, and vegetables was even more shocking. Countless people, after receiving their land from the feudal lords, erupted with a passion for production that was completely astonishing. Therefore, in the past few years, if one could calculate the GDP of the continent under the rule of the Tiando League, the GDP growth would be incomparably terrifying. Countless laborers were liberated, and countless lands were opened up. Therefore, many people were even joking. The so-called Doomsday War was simply fake. Yang Dingtian used the Doomsday War as a gimmick to carry out the biggest reform in the human countries, because many problems could not be solved by normal means, and there were too many benefits involved. But under the theme of saving the world, everything had to give way. Yang Dingtian's left hand was righteous, and his right hand was military force. In the past few years, he had carried out earth-shaking reforms in the human countries. Moreover, the whole process was bloody. Countless corpses were crushed under the gears of the Council of Light's violent machine. But under the theme of saving the world, under the theme of Doomsday War, everything appeared righteous. Therefore, despite the extreme state of war preparations, the prosperity of the Snakeman Empire. However, the Snakeman Empire was different. Almost all of the races that didn't have any fighting power had been turned into slaves to build cities, excavate ores, forge weapons, and so on. All the races with combat power had become soldiers. Therefore, the current Snakeman Empire was no different from hell. Most of the production had stopped. Herding and harvesting had been interrupted for a long time. If it weren't for the Sea Heart Queen building a large number of fishing boats and fishing in the vast sea, the Snakeman Empire would have run out of food already. Even so, there was still a large-scale famine in the Naga Empire. There was no longer any fairness or justice in this place. In this place, strength was king. It was the most naked pyramid structure. The docile races had been reduced to worse than pigs and dogs. According to the Council of Light's intelligence, since the establishment of the Snakeman Empire, more than 8 million half-humans had died in the hands of Queen Poisa. And in the hands of Queen Hai Xian, more than 40 million half-humans had died, and this was a very conservative number. In other words, in the years after Queen Hai Xian ascended the throne, 30 to 40% of the Snakeman Empire's population had died. Now the Empire's war machine was still expanding. She had no choice. She had to maintain a certain level of strength with the human countries, lest the army of the Snakeman Empire be reduced to a supporting role in the upcoming Doomsday War. How many people were left in the Snakeman Empire? How many troops did they have? Of course, this was top secret. Except for Queen Hai Xian, no one knew. But the Council of Light had general information. The Snakeman Empire had an army of 20 million. Yes, it was 20 million. The entire human countries had a population of more than 2 billion. But there were only 20 million first-line troops. The current population of the Snakeman Empire was less than 100 million. But they still had an army of 20 million. Yang Dingtian was completely unable to imagine how the Sea Heart Queen was able to support an army of 20 million soldiers. There were tens of millions of slaves in the Snakemen Empire. Most of them were manufacturing weapons, mining, and warships. Only a few were involved in food production and herding. In fact, this had become the biggest mystery for the Council of Light, and the biggest problem for the Council of Light's intelligence organization. Many people suspected that someone in the human countries was smuggling food. In the end, after a long investigation, they did not find any smuggling. It should be known that the Radiant Parliament's control over food was extremely strict. Under the surveillance of hundreds of thousands of winged cavalry warriors and countless ships, even if one wanted to smuggle food, the ships would not be able to go out to sea. So many people suspected that Sky Demon City was supplying food to the Snakemen Empire through secret channels. However, all of Sky Demon City's food was now supplied by the Council of Light. It did not produce food itself. Moreover, the extremely domineering Council of Light had almost deployed its army to the outside of Sky Demon City's walls. The reason why Sky Demon City was abnormally prosperous before was that the transactions between the Council of Light and the evil ways were carried out in Sky Demon City. So almost all of the world's shady transactions were gathered in Sky Demon City. Now the evil ways territory was only left with a few thousand square kilometers of territory and less than 10 million people. The two leaders of the evil ways, one Duga Xiao and the other Lone Wolf, no longer cared about worldly affairs. The Tiando League had been completely unified, so there was no need for any secret transactions. So Sky Demon City withered rapidly. Now, most of the brothels could no longer operate in Sky Demon City, and most of the civilians could no longer survive in Sky Demon City. They fled to the Council of Light's territory and became ordinary citizens under Yang Dingtian's rule. It was impossible for such a desolate Sky Demon City to provide food for such a huge Snakemen empire. Of course, it did not matter how Queen Hai Xan fed her army of 20 million people. But in short, such an abnormal power country could not exist for too long. If the Great War did not happen, the Snakemen Empire would collapse on its own. From this, it could be seen that Queen Hai Xan did not care about the life and death of the half-human race. She also did not want the wilderness of the Dongli grassland. She had always wanted to invade the human countries and enjoy the beautiful lands of the West Continent and even the Central Continent. Yang Dingtian and the other two crossed half of the Snakemen Empire's territory and quickly flew to the sky near Sacred Valley. It was ironic that when Queen Poisa ruled the Snakemen Empire, Saintess Hai Xan led the resistance army into Sacred Valley for the final resistance. After Hai Xan became the queen, her cruelty and evil deeds were 100 times more than Queen Poisa's. So her disciple, who was also Yang Dingtian's wife, Huang Yu, led the resistance army into Sacred Valley again, and continued the resistance. The outside of Sacred Valley was not only surrounded by a city wall, but also by a huge city. It was a huge military city. Queen Hai Xan built a huge city on the border of the defensive line outside Sacred Valley. The scale of this city was second only to the royal city. Hai Xan named it Mijing. The Snakemen Empire had 3 cities named Jingjing. The first was the royal city Jingdu, also known as Xian Jing, named after Hai Xian's heart. The second was the huge city under the celestial Red Sea, named Hai Jing. Firstly, it was named after the celestial Red Sea. Secondly, it was named after Queen Hai Xian's name. The third was Mi Jing on the west side of Sacred Valley. This name was also named after Queen Hai Xian's other name, Mi Di. From this, it could be seen that her mentality was one of absolute supremacy. The 3 Jingjing of the Snakemen Empire were named after her. Mi Jing was hundreds of miles long and wide. There were castles one after another and layers of defensive lines. There were at least 2 million troops stationed there. Yang Dingtian didn't know why Queen Hai Xan would build such a huge military city, or why she had to station such an astronomical number of troops. Was it for the hundreds of thousands of resistance army in Sacred Valley? It could not be. Queen Hai Xan could crush all the resistance army with a single finger. If it was not for the resistance army in Sacred Valley, it would be the vast sea to the east. Moreover, this sea was infinite and overlapped with space. Even if one flew out for 100,000 miles or 200,000 miles, there would be no end to it. It was impossible for the human kingdoms to attack through this area of the sea. However, Queen Hyexian made this the most important defensive area. She must have her reasons. To enter Sacred Valley, one must pass through Mijing. Even though it was night, and they were flying 10,000 meters above the ground, Yang Dingtian did not dare to be careless. He carried Yao Li in his left hand, and Yao Zi in his right. Then, he used his invisibility mystic skill, and demonic spirit mist cloak flash to pass through Mijing. Without a doubt, Yang Dingtian was right to be careful. Because Queen Hyexian had set up a huge energy formation in the sky above Mijing. Any energy that passed through would be detected, even if it was 10,000 meters above the ground. After Yang Dingtian entered invisibility, he entered a pseudo-isolated space, and could not create any energy waves. That was why he could pass through Mijing without being detected. After passing through Mijing, Yang Dingtian arrived outside Sacred Valley. Immediately he saw a crude city gate and a mountain pass. There were dozens of Foxman race warriors guarding it. It formed a stark contrast with the colossal Mijing. Yang Dingtian did not alert anyone, and directly flashed into Sacred Valley from the sky. After entering Sacred Valley, Yang Dingtian saw an incomparably miserable scene. Almost all of them were dressed in rags. Everyone was sallow and emaciated. Fortunately, the people here were no longer just living in tents. They were basically all living in wooden houses. Furthermore, the entire Sacred Valley had been extensively transformed, reclaiming many fields. Even many forests had been cut down and turned into arable land. There were densely packed houses one after another. The entire Sacred Valley had already become a huge village. No less than 100,000 rebels who were unwilling to obey Queen Hyexian lived in this densely packed village. It was already different from the Sacred Valley in Yang Dingtian's impression. Yang Dingtian walked on the dilapidated but orderly village roads, wanting to find Huang Yu's residence. This was obviously not an easy task, because the densely packed houses here were all similar. Deep into the center of Sacred Valley town, by the side of a river, Yang Dingtian saw a small square. There Yang Dingtian saw a small castle, a house made of stone. Furthermore, there were several Foxman race warriors guarding the outside of the house. The owner of this house was either Day by Day Bella or Huang Yu. Yang Dingtian turned invisible and quickly flashed into the small castle. Soon, he heard a familiar voice from inside. However, it was not Huang Yu's, but Princess Xiang Xiang of the Foxman race. Yang Wu, you piss me off. Do you know how scarce food is now? How can you throw food on the ground? Apologize immediately. Princess Xiang Xiang's voice sounded flustered and exasperated. Yang Dingtian jumped out of the window and saw Princess Xiang Xiang carefully picking up the coarse oatmeal on the ground, carefully wiping it and putting it into her mouth. Yang Dingtian could not help but feel sour in his heart. Princess Xiang Xiang, the daughter of the Foxman race's chief, Juri Bela, was the pearl in the palm of the entire Foxman race. She used to be so plump, but now, she was so thin that her eye sockets were sunken, and her chin was so sharp. Her delicate body seemed to be as light as a feather. Furthermore, the clothes on her body were also very tattered, and had many patches on them. Xiang Xiang was the princess of the Foxman race. If even she was like this, it could be seen how scarce the resources in Sacred Valley were. In front of Xiang Xiang, a little girl about 4 years old stood there angrily. She raised her little chin and pouted her little mouth as she confronted Xiang Xiang. However, her back was facing Yang Dingtian, so he could not see her face clearly. However, from the back view, she was a very stubborn little girl. Although her clothes were very exquisite, they had been worn for a long time. Moreover, the corners of her clothes were worn out. Yang Wu, how can you be so insensible? How can you waste food? Do you know how many people don't have enough to eat now? Xiang Xiang said angrily. You must apologize to Auntie. The little girl said crisply. I don't want to eat, I want Mommy to feed me. Who told her to not be at home every day? Mommy is very busy. Can't Auntie accompany you? Xiang Xiang said. No, I want mommy, I want mommy. The little girl said loudly. She clenched her teeth and did not cry. Xiang went over and hugged the little girl. She gently coaxed. Good baby, mommy will be back tonight. At this time, Yang Dingtian finally saw the little girl, the daughter he had never seen before. After taking a look, Yang Dingtian was instantly stunned. This daughter of his didn't look like Huang Yu. She didn't look like him, a living little Dugufengwu. That's right. No matter if it was her eyes or her nose, she looked exactly like Dugufengwu. This tall and exquisite nose was filled with willpower, and Yang Dingtian could see it with a single look. Furthermore, when she raised her chin, that domineering and powerful look was exactly the same as Dugufengwu. Yang Li was Dugufengwu's son, but he only inherited a portion of Dugufengwu's characteristics. The other half was Yang Dingtian's, which was a little arrogant. This little girl in front of him was a complete copy of Dugufengwu. However, because of the lack of resources, the little girl was a little skinny. Her small face was sharp, and her eyes were very big. However, Yang Dingtian recognized the heroic spirit that belonged to Dugufengwu with a single look. What was going on? Yang Dingtian was truly confused. Wasn't it already proven that Huang Yu wasn't Dugufengwu? In fact, Yang Dingtian had already reconfirmed that Yun Zhenu was actually Dugufengwu. Why was there a reversal now? The daughter that Huang Yu gave birth to was actually a small copy of Dugufengwu. That could only prove one thing. Huang Yu was Dugufengwu. Even if her soul spirit wasn't, her body was definitely Dugufengwu's. Her child was the irrefutable proof. Immediately after, Yang Dingtian thought of a possibility. Then he clenched his teeth. If that was the case, then Queen Hai Xian's intentions were truly unforgivable. If you aren't obedient, father won't come and visit you. Xiang couldn't convince her daughter, and was instantly angry. So be it. You guys only know how to lie anyway. Yang Wu said loudly. I know. My father doesn't want mother and me anymore. I don't care. Since she doesn't want us, we don't want her either. Afterward, she threw the small bowl on the ground again, and even stepped on it with her little feet. Bad father, bad father. I don't want father anymore. I don't want father anymore. The little girl stepped on it, and finally couldn't hold it in anymore, as she cried out loudly. Xiang couldn't hold it in either. She hugged the little girl, and also started crying. At this moment, Yang Dingtian couldn't hold it in anymore. He quickly rushed in, and hugged the little girl tightly in his arms. Good girl, good girl. Father is here. Sorry. Yang Dingtian's tears couldn't help but flow out. He hugged the little girl tightly, and kissed her hair with all his might. She was really skinny. She was already over 4 years old, but she didn't even weigh 10 kilograms. Yang Dingtian was so heartbroken that he was about to suffocate. He really regretted not coming to the Snake Men Empire earlier. Of course, the reason was because he didn't want to completely anger Queen Hai Xian. He also felt that Huang Yu was Hai Xian's disciple and her only family. Queen Hai Xian probably wouldn't do anything to her. But in reality, he still didn't care enough about Huang Yu. In the end, he let his wife and daughter suffer from the moment they were born. The little lass was in Yang Dingtian's embrace, and was immediately scared silly. At this moment, the sound of the door opening came from below. Huang Yu's voice sounded. Good girl, mother is back. Are you good? Huang Yu's voice was filled with intimacy, but it was also filled with fatigue. Chapter 890. Baby, stay at home with Auntie Xiang and play. Mommy and Daddy are going out, Huang Yu said gently. Oh, the little girl did not even turn her head, as she began to distribute the snacks on the bed. As she distributed the snacks, she muttered, This is for Mommy, this is for Auntie Xiang, this is for Daddy, this is for Sister Nyonyo. She was really amazing. At such a young age, after receiving such a large pile of snacks, she did not monopolize them, but began to distribute them to others. Yang Dingtian could not help but go over. He picked her up and kissed her. Then, he saw that Xiang was sitting in a slightly awkward position on the bed. Thinking that he had not greeted her since he came, he immediately said, Xiang, Thank you for taking care of baby Wu'er all these years. It's my pleasure. Xiang Xiang said softly as she clamped her legs even tighter. Then I'll go out with Huang Yu first. I'll talk to you about other things when I come back, okay? Yang Dingtian said. Okay, Xiang Xiang said. Then, Yang Dingtian turned invisible and went out with Huang Yu. After Yang Dingtian left, Xiang Xiang finally breathed a sigh of relief. Then, she quickly got off the bed and fetched a basin of water to wash her body. Auntie, what are you doing? The little girl Yang Wu asked curiously. No, nothing. Xiang Bela jumped in fright and said, Good baby, you can't tell anyone about this. Do you remember? Oh, the little girl answered casually. Yang Dingtian turned invisible and followed Huang Yu out of the Holy Valley. Yao Li and Yao Zi remained in the air above the small castle to protect baby Wu'er. Suddenly, Yao Zi opened her mouth and transmitted sound directly into her sister's ears. She said, That woman was screaming so fiercely just now. She even said that she was going to lose her soul. Is that kind of thing really that fun? When Yao Zi said this, her eyes were bright and filled with curiosity. Yao Li did not say another word. She went over and twisted Yao Zi's ear. She scolded angrily. Is this something you should know? Yao Zi pursed her lips and said, You're already so old, yet you're still avoiding this topic. How hypocritical. Then she complained, Yang Dingtian is really too much. It's fine if he wants us to risk our lives for him. But he even wants us to listen to his sex scenes. This is too much. Without another word, Yao Li went to pinch Yao Zi's mouth. Outside the Holy Valley, Yang Dingtian immediately saw Queen Hai Xian's envoy. It was an old acquaintance, the traitor of the Black Heaven sect, Queen Hai Xian's loyal servant, and Dongli's direct subordinate Gui Wuzi. Speaking of which, he was really amazing. He played all three roles so successfully. Old slave greets Princess Huang Yu. When Gui Wuzi saw Huang Yu, he immediately bowed deeply. I don't dare, Mr. Gui Wuzi. Huang Yu said, I don't have the guts to be the princess of the Naga Empire. You can call me Lady Yang. Gui Wuzi's brows twitched slightly. It was obvious that he did not have a good impression of Yang Dingtian. In fact, he was filled with hatred. However, he still lowered his head and said, Yes, Lady Yang. Gui Wuzi said, Her Majesty wants to see you and your daughter. Huang Yu said, No need. I've already severed all ties with her. We have nothing to do with each other. Gui Wuzi said, If I'm not wrong, the Holy Valley has run out of food. People are dying constantly, right? Huang Yu said, So what? Gui Wuzi said, Her Majesty the Queen can bestow this valley to the resistance army, led by Zhuri Bela. Furthermore, she can provide sufficient food to support them every year. The only condition is that you bring your daughter back to Her Majesty the Queen's side. Huang Yu sneered. Since when did she care about me so much? Unbelievable. Gui Wuzi said, Her Majesty has always cared about you. Otherwise, your little resistance army wouldn't even be able to pick up a weapon. The Naga Empire could destroy them with a single finger. The only reason the Holy Valley still exists is because of your existence. Huang Yu said, Thank her for me. Tell her that there's no need. I've already severed all ties with her. Gui Wuzi said, Are you just going to watch everyone in the Holy Valley starve to death? Huang Yu said, This is the path they chose. They would rather live standing than die kneeling. Gui Wuzi sighed and said, In that case, I'll report to Her Majesty as it is. However, it might be difficult for them to starve to death. If you refuse in a few days, the army of the lost capital will invade the Holy Valley and kill everyone inside, turning their flesh into food. Huang Yu suddenly trembled and said in a hoarse voice, Shameless, you're all shameless, Gui Wuzi said. So please think about it carefully. You have about 3 days. After 3 days, not even a chicken or a dog will be left in the Holy Valley. After saying that, Gui Wuzi left directly. After the other party left, Huang Yu instinctively wanted to lean behind. Although she didn't know where Yang Dingtian was hiding, she still instinctively wanted to lean on him. Be careful, he hasn't gone far. Let's go back and talk. Yang Dingtian said. After returning to Huang Yu's small castle, Huang Yu called the other leader of the resistance army, the Naga Patriarch, Day by Day Bela. After seeing young Dingtian, the Foxman patriarch was very excited. She hugged young Dingtian and patted him on the back. "I'm sorry, patriarch, I'm late." Young Dingtian said. No, it's never too late." Day by Day Bella said. After calming down, Huang Yu told Day by Day Bella what Gui Wuzi said. "Hai Xian wants me to bring Bao Bao to her side. Otherwise she will kill everyone in the Holy Valley. We only have 3 days." Huang Yu said. "No." Day by Day Bella said. "Don't overestimate Hai Xian's feelings for you. She must have a very special reason for doing this. It's definitely not because she misses you." "Yes," Yang Dingtian said. "Her Excellency is right. She's doing this because Queen Poise's body is missing. It hurts the most in her heart." Huang Yu immediately looked at Yang Dingtian. Yang Dingtian nodded and said, "Yes, I was the one who stole Queen Poise's body. She wants to use you and your daughter as hostages to force me to hand over Queen Poise's body." After hearing Yang Dingtian's words, Huang Yu's eyes trembled and she almost burst into tears. At this moment, when Queen Hai Xian summoned her, even though she refused to admit it, she still felt a little comforted. She felt that her master still missed her, but she didn't think that she would be taken hostage to force Yang Dingtian. She really didn't care about her family anymore and had lost her mind. Yang Dingtian said. Also, Hai Xian sent Gui Wuzi here to try peaceful means before resorting to force. Within 3 days, he will definitely send troops to destroy the Holy Valley and forcibly take Huang Yu and Bao Bao away. Huang Yu gritted her teeth and said, "I'd rather die than submit." Yang Dingtian held onto her small hand and asked her not to be agitated. He continued, "Lord Patriarch, there are 2 other experts who came with me. We both have the Devil's Spirit Mist Cloak, while I have the Invisibility Mystic skill. So we can take 3 or 4 people back to the human countries. My original plan was to take Xiang Xiang and Bao Bao Wu back to the human countries. Then, I will deal with Queen Hai Xian and try to save everyone in the Holy Valley. But now, it seems that this plan won't work. Queen Hai Xian has completely lost her patience. She will launch a fatal attack on the Holy Valley in 3 days." Day by Day Bella said, "Sect Master Yang, actually, we've lived for a few years and it's completely enough. As long as you can bring Huang Yu, Xiang Xiang, and Bao Bao Wu back to Cloud Heaven City, I will be satisfied." "No," Yang Dingtian said resolutely. "I will definitely save the hundreds of thousands of people in the Saint Valley. No matter the price, I will save them. You and Huang Yu have persevered for a few years and didn't abandon them. It doesn't make sense for you to abandon them as soon as I come. So, the next thing we need to discuss is how to save them." "Yes," Day by Day Bella said, "please speak." Yang Dingtian said, "The first plan is that the 8 million soldiers of the Council of Light have already gathered and are conducting military drills in the Northwest Sea. As long as we give the order, we can reach the coast of the Snakeman Empire within 3 days and attack the Empire's southern defense line. It can be said that the strength of our 8 million soldiers of the Council of Light exceeds the strength of the Snakeman Empire's 20 million soldiers. At that time, Queen Hai Xian won't have the mind to deal with the Holy Valley and can only focus on defending the southern defense line." "No," Day by Day Bella said. "It's not worth it to work so hard for just a few 100,000 people in the Holy Valley. If there are huge casualties, we won't hesitate to die." Yang Dingtian said, "That's right, this plan is not feasible, because the Council of Light's army exists to defeat the Legion of Doom. If we have no other choice, we don't want to go to war with the Snakeman Empire. We want the entire Dongli grassland to be part of the resistance against the Legion of Doom. And even if we have no other choice, now is not the best time to go to war with the Snakeman Empire." Day by Day Bella nodded. Yang Dingtian said, "The second plan is to kill Queen Hai Xian." As soon as these words came out, everyone suddenly trembled. "Kill Queen Hai Xian?" These words were so loud that even the apathetic could hear them, because whether it was Huang Yu or Day by Day Bella, they knew very well how powerful Queen Hai Xian was. Defeating her and killing her was something they didn't even dare to think about. Day by Day Bella organized her words and said, "Sir Yang Dingtian, You might not know, but Queen Hai Xen is completely different from a few years ago. Through some kind of evil technique, her cultivation is very, very powerful. Yang Dingtian nodded and said, That's right, I really don't have the confidence to kill Hai Xen. I don't even know what her cultivation is like. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy can you win 100 battles. Moreover, this is not a competition to determine the winner or loser, but to kill. If you can't kill her, the consequences will be unimaginable. So in a situation where I don't have the confidence, I don't dare to fall out with her. So the two plans that Yang Dingtian mentioned would not work. Therefore, it seemed that there was nothing else he could do. The only thing he could do was to take away Xiang Xiang, Yang Wu's baby and Xiang Xiang. It was impossible to save hundreds of thousands of people in the Holy Valley at once, unless there was an all-out war with the Snake People Empire. Suddenly, Huang Yu and day by day Bella fell into despair. Towards Yang Dingtian, no one blamed him. Husband, take our precious daughter and leave. Huang Yu said softly, I will stay with the resistance army. I already feel very happy that you came to see me and take our daughter with you. Yang Dingtian grabbed her hand and said, Listen to me. I've said it before, I must save these hundreds of thousands of people. I'm just talking about the plans. Huang Yu said, But the first two plans will not work. It's impossible to save hundreds of thousands of people at once. Besides, there are only 3 days left. Only Princess Xiang Xiang stared at Yang Dingtian with her beautiful eyes wide open. She was romantic and naive. Since a long time ago, she felt that Yang Dingtian was omnipotent. Therefore, she did not speak pessimistically and desperately, but waited for Yang Dingtian to tell her the third plan. Yang Dingtian said, The third plan is also the last one. That is, we pin all our hopes on the vast sea behind the Holy Valley, and escape from the Snake People Empire through this sea. Huang Yu hurriedly said, Husband, that's impossible. The sea in the east of the Dongli grassland is endless. Many people have tried it. Whether it's tens of thousands of miles or hundreds of thousands of miles, it's still an endless sea. Logically speaking, we should have reached the northwest continent, but it's still an endless sea. Moreover, there are no islands. I know, Yang Dingtian said. This is actually a kind of spatial folding and spatial repetition. It's endless. As long as you enter, you'll never reach the end, and will only be lost forever. If I'm not mistaken, this should be the boundary between the Vitality continent and another world. It's just that because they're in different planes, there's this kind of spatial overlap. Juri Bela was still able to understand some of Yang Dingtian's words. However, his Phoenix language was already completely blurred, and he couldn't understand it. So next I'm going to explore this endless sea. If it's really as I imagined, then I have a way to jump out of this plane and go to another space. And if that space is safe enough, I'll find a way to evacuate everyone in the Holy Valley to that space. Yang Dingtian said. At this time, Yang Dingtian's words were completely fantastical to everyone present. Day by day Bella thought for a while and said, Sir Yang Dingtian, if we go to another space, will Queen Hai Xen be able to chase us there? Impossible, Yang Dingtian said bluntly. In this world except for me, there's no second person who can jump through space. Suddenly, Huang Yu and Xiang Xiang's beautiful eyes were enchanted. Although they didn't understand what Yang Dingtian was saying, they couldn't stop their worship. Yang Dingtian said, So although the third plan is very unlikely, it's the only way. Without further ado, I'm going to set off immediately to explore the endless sea in the east of the Dongli grassland. The endless sea behind the Holy Valley. Yang Dingtian's plan and idea were really crazy. Chapter 891. Because they were worried that there were spies in the resistance army, they did not announce any rescue in the Sacred Valley. Furthermore, the pills were not distributed directly. Instead, they were dissolved in water and mixed with the roots of the plants to be boiled together. Finally, they were distributed to everyone. Yao Li and Yao Zi were still hiding in the shadows of the small castle. Yang Dingtian went to the endless sea in the east to explore. Huang Yu wanted to go with him, but it was obviously impossible. The entire sacred valley was less than 100 miles deep. It was surrounded by towering mountains on both sides. The entire huge valley stretched all the way to the sea. Houses were densely packed on both sides of the valley. All kinds of crops were planted on the barren land. They looked completely listless. There was still a long time before they could be harvested. Moreover, it seemed that there was basically no harvest. However, the resistance army still meticulously took care of each plant. Near the Valley of the Endless Sea, there was a city wall that was also guarded by the resistance army. Of course, no enemy would attack from the Endless Sea. This city wall was to prevent the resistance army from entering the Endless Sea. This was because in the past few years, many of the resistance army had set their sights on the Endless Sea. They hoped to find a way to escape from here. At the very least, they hoped to find a source of food here. However, when they were in despair, there were no living creatures in the sea. There was not even seaweed, let alone fish and shrimp. However, this still could not stop countless resistance army from exploring the sea. As a result, there were countless casualties. Left with no choice, they could only build a city wall to block it. Young Dingtian easily passed through the city wall and immediately arrived at the beach. This was an extremely dreamy sea. The sand on the beach was very uniform and fine. It was snow-white sand. The seawater was the most dreamy blue. There were no impurities. However, there was no wind, so there were no waves. It did not look like a sea. Instead, it looked like a yin-yang mirror. Young Dingtian grabbed a handful of sand and observed it. He did not find anything special except that it was very beautiful. Then he scooped up a puddle of seawater. There was nothing special about it except that it was very clear. He stuck out his tongue and licked it. It was slightly salty, but there was no special energy. Young Dingtian floated into the air and flew toward the east. After flying for several thousand li, Yang Dingtian entered a very strange state. It was as though he was not moving forward at all. That's right, there was no sense of advancement. Because the sky was clear, there were no clouds, the sea was blue, and there were no waves or islands. The scenery was unchanging. Even the sea was absolutely blue, and the sky was absolutely blue, as if they had completely blended together. Yang Dingtian seemed to be in a huge blue crystal. There was no evidence of Yang Dingtian's movement. But in front of him, it was still boundless. Yang Dingtian continued to fly forward. His speed was very, very fast. In just 6 hours, he had flown over 10,000 miles. Then he stopped. He began to use the darkness profound flame to carve out a dark vortex. The black hole created by the dark vortex isolated a space. Then, Yang Dingtian used a special energy attribute and a special frequency to make the two mystic flames collide in the isolated space at the fastest speed possible. Boom! Suddenly, a magnificent space door appeared in the air. Yang Dingtian took a deep breath and jumped into the space door. Immediately after, Yang Dingtian prepared himself mentally. No matter which space or plane he traveled to, he wouldn't be completely shocked or astonished. However, he did not reach any space or travel to any plane. He was still on the surface of the endless sea. That's strange, it shouldn't be like this. Yang Dingtian exclaimed. This endless sea is definitely abnormal. It must be the effect of space folding. Why can't I travel through the space door? Could it be that he had not really reached the end of the endless sea? So, Yang Dingtian floated on the surface of the sea and sat down cross-legged. He took the mystic gathering pill to recover his mystic chi. Half an hour later, he had fully recovered his combat mystic chi. This time, Yang Dingtian did not only use the mystic technique to fly, but also used the mystic flame to fly. This speed was faster, but of course the consumption of mystic chi was more shocking. So Yang Dingtian flew east for another 10,000 miles. After recovering his combat mystic chi, he created another space door and jumped over. However, he was still in the endless sea. There was no change. This was really strange. Yang Dingtian continued to fly east. After an entire day and night, Yang Dingtian used the mystic flame to fly out for 100,000 miles. According to the geographical distance, he had even surpassed the eastern cloud state. However, it was still the endless sea. Fortunately, this place was different from the end of the world in New Naga. It was a void. Once his mystic chi was exhausted, he would fall and be lost. This was a boundless sea, and he could recover his mystic chi. When he reached 100,000 miles, Yang Dingtian created a space door. But he still could not jump. Yang Dingtian was really surprised and puzzled. He was completely at his wit's end. He could not go any further. There was no point in going any further. And if he went any further, he would not have enough time. He had to go back. So what should he do? Go back without any gains and wait for the Snake People Empire's army to attack. Yang Dingtian directly led Yao Li and Yao Zi to fight the Snake People Empire, and then fight with Hai Xan? He really did not have a plan yet. He at least wanted to know what cultivation level Hai Xan was at now. For example, he wanted to compete with Wu Daozi, so he knew the general level of his cultivation level. Even so, Yang Dingtian won easily. However, because of the second great evil spirit, Yang Dingtian almost risked his life to completely exile Wu Daozi. Otherwise, he could not do anything to him. Yang Dingtian floated above the sea and looked at the absolutely pure sea water. He suddenly wondered if the boundary between the two planes was not in the air above the sea, but at the bottom of the sea. With this thought, Yang Dingtian immediately dived into the sea. He kept diving and diving. 100 meters, 1,000 meters, 10,000 meters, 100,000 meters, 1,000,000 meters. Yang Dingtian was sure that this was definitely not a normal ocean. Even if a normal ocean was 1,000 kilometers deep, the pressure would be incomparably shocking. However, Yang Dingtian had already dived 1,000,000 meters, but the pressure of the sea water could only be said to be very ordinary. It was no different from 10 meters. And most importantly, it was still endless below. It was as if there was no way to know how deep it was. Well, even in the chaotic world, there would not be such a deep ocean. This ocean itself was some kind of spatial folding and repetition. Yang Dingtian began to summon the dark profound fire in the water, and carved a dark profound fire. Even if this was seawater, the black hole created by the dark vortex was enough to swallow everything into nothingness, and then create an isolated space. Using two dark profound fires, he quickly and shockingly created another beautiful spatial door. Then, Yang Dingtian suddenly jumped and passed through the spatial door. Whoosh! That familiar feeling came again. The familiar feeling of passing through planes came again. In a flash, Yang Dingtian entered a brand new spatial world. First of all, this world was not that beautiful, nor was it that beautiful. It was not Yang Dingtian's imagination. The best result was a beautiful grassland that stretched as far as the eye could see. Of course, it was not the worst result that Yang Dingtian imagined. It was not like the third dark realm, where there was a thick swallowing fog everywhere. And Yang Dingtian's prediction that it was very likely to be the first dark realm was not the case. This spatial world was a completely dead world. The entire world was fragmented. At a glance, there was an endless abyss. There was no complete land. It was all torn apart and turned into floating boulders. The small ones were only the size of a house, while the large ones were hundreds of kilometers in diameter. And the boulder that Yang Dingtian was standing on was hundreds of kilometers in diameter. These boulders filled the entire space and were moving slowly. Occasionally, they would even collide. Once they collided, they would shatter, and the large ones would become small boulders. However, in this space, there was air and celestial chi energy. He just did not know if there was any life or powerful demon beasts inside. Yang Dingtian immediately shuttled and flew in this space. He flew at a very fast speed for thousands of kilometers. He did not find any demon beasts or living creatures, not even energy creatures. And he released countless vengeful spirits, which proved that there were no living creatures here. There was no energy fluctuation. Yang Dingtian was surprised. In his knowledge, this world was either the Vitality Continent or the Dark Realm, and the space in front of him seemed to be nothing. It was called the Vitality Continent, but there was no life in it. It was called the Dark Realm, but there was air and celestial chi energy inside. Of course, Yang Dingtian could not see the two suns or the sky here, because all the space was filled with floating boulders. However, the sunlight could barely shine in a little. There was some light inside, Then could it be that this world was a boundary between the Dark Realm and the Vitality Continent? Or was it similar to the product of the Little Western Paradise's destruction? It should be like this. The world of the Little Western Paradise was completely torn apart, but there were living creatures inside, and the celestial chi energy was very rich. Thousands of miles of land were floating in the air. And if the Little Western Paradise was destroyed again, it might become like this. All life would disappear. The originally large piece of land had become like this because of the constant collisions. And all the soil had been scattered, so only boulders were left. Then, what should it be named? Let's call it the Torn Space. Yang Dingtian originally wanted to explore how big this torn space was. But because of time constraints, he could only give up for the time being. Because the next retreat would take a very long time. Yang Dingtian came to the place where he first appeared, which was the edge of the torn space. He opened a space door and jumped out. Whoosh! Yang Dingtian's eyes lit up. He jumped out of the torn space and came to the bottom of the endless sea. Then he quickly floated up. After just a few dozen meters, he came out of the water. Sure enough, the thousands of miles of the endless sea was the effect of space folding. After coming out of the water, Yang Dingtian was shocked to find that the beach was not far ahead, only a dozen meters. What a scam! The sea surface was only a dozen meters wide, but it was folded into infinity, and Yang Dingtian flew 100,000 miles. So this endless sea was not an ocean at all, but just a puddle of water. Yang Dingtian sighed at the inconceivable world, and then used the fastest speed to return to the sacred valley. At this time, Huang Yu and Day by Day Bella were waiting anxiously. A day and a half had passed. When Yang Dingtian quickly appeared in the house, Huang Yu and others were shocked, and then very surprised. He should have succeeded. If he hadn't, he wouldn't have returned so quickly. The plan works, Yang Dingtian said straightforwardly. This endless sea is actually only a dozen meters wide and a few dozen meters deep, and there are countless overlapping illusions behind it. 29 meters underwater. You can open a space door and enter another world. Huang Yu and Xiang Xiang's beautiful eyes widened to the maximum. This is too unbelievable. You can enter another space? Yang Dingtian. Huang Yu, Your Excellency clan leader, from now on, gather everyone in the sacred valley and go to the endless sea as quickly as possible. Not to mention going to another space. Just say that there is a kind of energy water in the endless sea that can provide energy for the human body without the need for food. Also, after entering the endless sea, everyone has to pass through the space door blindfolded. Yes, Day by Day Bella said. Yang Dingtian. Yaoli Yaozi, come with me to the endless sea. I will send the two of you to the new space. The two of you wait there, and welcome the Sacred Valley Resistance Army. Yes, Yaoli and Yaozi's voices came from the space. Then, the few of them quickly divided up the work. Huang Yu and Day by Day Bella began to gather everyone in the Sacred Valley. Yang Dingtian, on the other hand, brought Yaoli and Yaozi to the endless sea. This time, Yang Dingtian only flew a few dozen meters and dived a few dozen meters before opening a space door. Then, he had Yaoli and Yaozi jump over. Yaozi was extremely excited. She almost jumped over while screaming and cheering. In the end, Yang Dingtian jumped over. As soon as he arrived at the 100-meter-long rock that tore through space, Yaozi pounced on Yang Dingtian and hugged his neck. She cheered loudly. Yang Dingtian, I love you so much. You can even jump through space. This is the most wonderful and exciting day of my life. While she was excited, she kissed his lips as if she didn't need money. Chapter 892. Yang Dingtian tried his best to avoid the crazy girl. In the end, it was still Yaoli who grabbed Yaozi by the ear and dragged her away. Please wait inside. I'll go out and help guard the entrance of the Sacred Valley and help them evacuate, Yang Dingtian said. Yes, Yaoli said. Hurry up. Don't leave the two of us here. Otherwise I won't forgive you, Yaozi said. Yang Dingtian was speechless and said, Don't worry. Then, he opened a spatial portal and jumped back to the endless ocean. Under the command of Huang Yu, Day by Day Bella, and the other leaders, the resistance army in the Sacred Valley gathered very quickly. In fact, they had been living a precarious life for the past few years. As long as the order was given, they could quickly get into formation and assemble without much chaos. They did not express their belief or disbelief in going to the endless ocean to search for the energy water. However, they were willing to follow orders. Moreover, they were not even afraid of death now. Of course, they did not know why. But after eating the soup made from the plant's roots, they felt full of energy. Therefore, the existence of the energy water in the endless ocean might not be a baseless rumor. In less than 4 hours, more than 100,000 people in the Sacred Valley had all gathered and lined up. Young Dingtian was completely shocked by this speed. This speed was not inferior to a professional army. One should know that the gathering of more than 100,000 people was completely different from the gathering of more than a few thousand people. Furthermore, the positions of those 100,000 people were all fixed. They were not randomly standing around. Throughout the entire process, Yang Dingtian had been at the entrance of the valley, staring at the lost capital not far away. Looking from the ancient entrance, the lost capital was like a giant beast entrenched in the easternmost part of the Naga Empire. Yang Dingtian really did not understand. There was nothing in the endless ocean. Was there a need for Queen Hai Xian to build such a huge city here? Seeing that the Naga Empire's lost capital had no reaction at all, Yang Dingtian immediately went to do another important thing, which was to create a passage in the water. This was because the space door had to be dozens of meters under the endless ocean. If the resistance army were to swim through the portal, it would be too slow. Therefore, day by day Bella led thousands of people and cut down all the largest trees in the Sacred Valley. These trees were all over 3 to 4 meters in diameter. Yang Dingtian used the mystic fire to drill holes in the middle of these giant trees at the fastest speed, forming a passageway with a diameter of more than 2 meters. It could completely accommodate 2 or 3 people. After hollowing out the middle of the 4 giant trees, Yang Dingtian used the mystic flame to melt the metal stored in the Sacred Valley and made it into a few giant iron hoops. He then connected the giant trees together firmly and ensured that there wouldn't be any leakage at the junction. Not only that, but Yang Dingtian also used the devil's silk to wrap the entire tree, ensuring that no matter how many people ran in the giant tree tunnel, it would not be damaged. This 3 to 4 meter wide and 10 meter long wooden tunnel weighed more than a few 100,000 kilograms after it was completed. Yang Dingtian blocked one of them. Then, he lifted this huge tunnel by himself, flew directly to the endless ocean, and placed it in the water. Just like that, a perfect tunnel was built, directly connecting the bottom of the ocean to the beach. Soon, Xiang reported that everyone in the Sacred Valley had gathered. Day by day Bella then led the last elites of the Foxman tribe, a total of thousands of Foxman tribe warriors, to guard the entrance of the Sacred Valley. Of course, there would not be any problems. This was because the lost capital of the Snake People Empire did not care about the resistance army of the Sacred Valley at all. If it were not for Huang Yu, these people would have died many times over. Queen Hai Xian had already killed tens of millions of half-humans. A mere 100,000 would not be a problem. Therefore, the Snake People Empire soldiers in the lost capital did not care about the situation in the Sacred Valley at all, nor did they send any winged cavalry to investigate in the air. Yang Dingtian and day by day Bella looked at each other, and then quickly flew in the direction of the endless ocean. They came to the end of the tunnel. Yang Dingtian began to release the dark mystical flame, and created a dark vortex. The rapidly spinning energy vortex quickly formed a black hole, and began to devour everything, forming an isolated space. Then, using a special frequency, the dark mystical flame, which was superimposed countless times, slammed into the vortex, and instantly created a beautiful spatial door at the end of the tunnel. Huang Yu and Xiang were completely stunned when they saw this scene. This was something that they did not understand at all. However, these two were the only ones who saw this scene. Huang Yu, Xiang, both of you go out and command the resistance army to rush into the tunnel as quickly as possible. Run with your eyes closed, and do not stop, Yang Dingtian said. Yes, husband, Huang Yu said. Yes, husband, Princess Xiang said instinctively, and then immediately blushed and ran out with Huang Yu. In the night, on the beach, countless resistance army had already formed up. The hundreds of thousands of people spread all the way into the sacred valley. Huang Yu pointed at the entrance of the tunnel and said, "Do you see that hole?" Yes, princess, the resistance army shouted in unison. Huang Yu said, "All of you use your level 8 speed, do not slow down, and do not rush into this hole. After entering, all of you close your eyes and keep rushing forward. Remember not to open your eyes." Yes, all the resistance army said. The so-called level 8 speed was roughly equivalent to about 500 meters per minute. "Begin charge," Huang Yu ordered. Then, the orderly formation of the resistance army rushed forward with a neat and fast rhythm. One after another, they rushed into the tunnel, and then closed their eyes and rushed forward with their level 8 speed. Soon, they reached the end of the tunnel. Whoosh! They rushed through the spatial door and jumped into the torn space. The first, the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth. As for Yang Dingtian, he had to constantly transfer energy to the spatial door from afar. This spatial door could pass through energy objects of the same level as Yang Dingtian. In other words, it was equivalent to countless resistance army. Therefore, it was not a problem for countless people to pour in. However, this dark vortex needed Yang Dingtian to maintain it with his qi at all times. Otherwise, it would disappear directly in the next moment, and then the spatial door would turn into ashes. Whoosh 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 whoosh. One by one, the resistance army quickly jumped into the spatial door. Yang Dingtian had calculated that these resistance army were absolutely well trained. On average, 4 or 5 people could jump through every second. In other words, more than 10,000 people could jump through in an hour. In this way, more than 100,000 resistance army could all pass through this spatial door in about 10 hours. Therefore, in terms of time, it was completely enough. In this way, Yang Dingtian used the spatial jumping technique and successfully staged a victorious escape from the endless seabed in the east of the Sacred Valley. And the Snake People Empire still had no idea what was happening here. In the whole process, the most difficult thing was to maintain the chaos of more than 100,000 people. However, this was not a problem at all for more than 100,000 resistance army. They were not even afraid of death, and were always prepared to die. Therefore, they did not ask anything, not to mention the spatial door. Even if it was hell, they would jump directly into it. Anyway, they were basically on the road to death. At this time, at the entrance of the Sacred Valley, day by day Bella led the elite resistance army forward to carry out the final defense. They needed to wait until everyone had retreated before they could leave. Time continued to pass. The retreat on the endless seaside was still continuing. The long line in the Sacred Valley was getting shorter and shorter. Gradually the sky was getting brighter. It was less than 10 hours before the retreat began. The retreat of more than 100,000 people was also coming to an end. It turned out that the chaotic world also had Venus, and there were 2 of them. After these 2 Venus appeared, the sky was about to brighten. The last day of the 3-day deadline had arrived. Woo! Suddenly, in the lost capital of the Snake People Empire not far away, a distant and mournful horn sounded. Then the entire ground began to tremble. The army of the lost capital began to gather. Day by day Bella was high up, and could clearly see that the gates of the 100-mile city wall were slowly opening. Then, one after another, the half-human race army came out of the gates in orderly steps, and gathered on the plains outside the city wall. Bang 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 bang. Every square formation was a 10,000-strong army, all of them armed to the teeth. Every 10,000-strong square formation had 2 senior officers, 1 Snake People officer, and 1 half-human officer. 1, 2, 3, 4. The gates of the lost capital were like a giant beast opening the devil's mouth, spitting out countless evil armies. Finally, day by day Bella counted clearly. A total of 100 square formations, a total of 1,000,000 half-human race army, gathered on the plains below the city wall. It was pitch black, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. It was vast and boundless. Then a sharp howl sounded. Then, black dots flew out of the lost capital and gathered in the sky. They were from the Eagleman race, born to be air cavalry. They were winged cavalry warriors as well as warriors. Awa! Awa! Countless eaglemen screamed and flew into the sky, lining up neatly. Close to 100,000 eaglemen lined up in the sky, spanning dozens of miles. At this time, the two suns had risen into the sky, but the light that shone down was blocked by countless eaglemen. The thousands of elite resistance army at the entrance of the Sacred Valley were completely stunned. The Snake People Empire had mobilized 1 million troops just to wipe out the 100,000 resistance army in the Sacred Valley? This was too crazy. Was it necessary? Patriarch, today is probably our last day in this world. Later, if we kill one, we'll break even. If we kill two, we'll make a profit, said a Foxman race officer. Day by day, Bella looked in the direction of the endless ocean in the distance, smiled slightly, and did not speak. At this time, all the war drums in the lost capital of the Snake People Empire suddenly sounded. Boom, boom, boom. The intense sound was deafening even from dozens of miles away. Flatten the Sacred Valley, kill them all. A senior general of the Snake People Empire suddenly gave the order. Suddenly, the million-strong army moved, marching toward the Sacred Valley like a tide. At this time, two beautiful figures suddenly appeared in the Sacred Valley. It was Yao Li and Yao Zi. Chief, all the resistance army has retreated. It's time for you to retreat, Yao Li said. Day by day, Bella looked at the million-strong Foxman army not far away, and said, I'll stay and fight with the two ladies. No need, quickly retreat with your people. Yao Li said, Sect Master Yang Dingtian ordered us to come and help you. Then, she and Yao Zi each took one side to guard the entrance of the Sacred Valley. Day by day, Bella said loudly, Everyone, head toward the endless ocean, full speed ahead. Yes. Immediately, thousands of elite resistance army rushed toward the endless ocean at the fastest speed. At the same time, the Eagleman army in the sky above the lost capital had finished gathering, and immediately covered the sky as they flew toward the Sacred Valley. Although it was only a few dozen miles, it would still take some time for the million-strong ground army to reach the Sacred Valley. But the Eaglemen were very fast. Immediately, the two of them held the sharp swords in their hands tightly, ready to fight crazily for a while to stop the countless Eaglemen army. However, unexpectedly, the Eaglemen army did not fly directly toward the Sacred Valley, but changed their formation in the air, and formed a complete encirclement in the air, leaving the Sacred Valley with no way out. The resistance army led by Day Bella was very fast, and they ran more than 100 miles in an hour. In just over an hour, they rushed to the shore of the endless ocean. Head toward that entrance full speed ahead, and close your eyes, Day Bella ordered. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Immediately, thousands of elite resistance army rushed into the entrance of the giant tree passage, and went through the spatial door at the end of the passage. Xiang and Huang Yu had both entered the spatial tear to maintain order. Therefore, all the resistance army in the Sacred Valley had retreated and entered the spatial tear. Yang Dingtian used the demon spirit mist cloak flash to reach the entrance of the Sacred Valley quickly. At this time, the million-strong army of the Naga Empire was about 20 miles away from the entrance of the Sacred Valley. The inescapable snare formation of 100,000 eaglemen had just finished setting up, and then it flew toward the Sacred Valley quickly, covering the sky and the sun. It's time to go, Yang Dingtian said to Yao Li and Yao Zi. It's a pity that we don't even have a chance to make a move, Yao Zi said reluctantly. Then, the three of them used the demon spirit mist cloak flash to quickly rush toward the endless ocean. Yang Dingtian used the mystic flame to completely destroy this eye-raising passage, turning it into ashes and leaving no traces behind. Finally, he created a spatial door dozens of meters under the sea. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Yao Li, Yao Zi, and Yang Dingtian directly jumped through the spatial door, and all of them entered the spatial tear. 15 minutes later, the 100,000 Eaglemen army flew into the sky above the Sacred Valley. When they saw the empty Sacred Valley, they were completely stunned. Where did these 100,000 people go? Could they have gone to heaven or hell? 2 hours later, countless Naga Empire army entered the sacred valley. However, there was no one to be seen. Chapter 893. This is really a ghost. Not long ago, the entrance of the Holy Valley was clearly guarded by the resistance army. 2 days ago, during the routine aerial reconnaissance, the Holy Valley was densely packed with people. 3 days ago, when Gui Wuxia entered the Holy Valley, there were still people everywhere. In such a short time, the people in the Holy Valley had disappeared. Could it be that they had drilled underground? If it was only 3 or 5 people, it would be possible, but there were more than 100,000 people. The entire Holy Valley was completely surrounded, and the people inside were so hungry that their legs had turned to jelly. It was impossible for them to escape, even if they had wings. Now all of them had disappeared without a trace. They had evaporated into thin air. The supreme commander of the battlefield, General Kuei Yao, flew back and forth in the Holy Valley several times, completely unable to believe this fact. Then he suddenly roared, "Dig 3 feet into the ground. Search every inch. Find them." Yes, all the high-ranking generals shouted in unison. Then, the million-plus half-human army began to destroy the Holy Valley like never before. All the houses were demolished and smashed to pieces. All the plants, all the trees were all cut down. They really dug 3 feet underground. No, 3 feet underground, 300 feet underground. In the end, they even sent drilling dragons to crazily drill a few hundred meters underground. Even so, not a single person was found. General Kuei Yao was really going crazy. He ordered sternly, "All eaglemen search the endless sea. Search the bottom of the sea and the surface." Yes. Then, the 100,000 eaglemen all flew toward the endless sea. It blotted out the sky and the sun, instantly filling up the sky above the endless sea and the bottom of the water. They kept searching east, 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 and east. After searching for a few thousand miles, they did not find a single person. Kuei Yao was really going crazy. Her Majesty the Queen had given the task of attacking the Holy Valley to him. This was a completely easy battle. In the end, more than 100,000 people in the Holy Valley had disappeared. After searching for a few days and nights, Kuei Yao finally confirmed that everyone in the Holy Valley had completely disappeared. Then he had no choice but to report to Kuei Ba and the Queen's secret envoy, Gui Wuxia. Of course, the two of them were already aware of the happenings in the Saint Valley. Gui Wuxia was still unwilling to give up and personally explored every corner of the Holy Valley. But in the end, he found nothing. In the end, Gui Wuxia decided to personally report this matter to Queen Hyexan. At this time, the hundreds of thousands of people of the Holy Valley Resistance Army had completely settled down in the torn space. Of course, in this torn space, there was nothing but floating boulders, so it must be extremely difficult. However, it was still much better than being slaughtered. Of course, this was only a temporary refuge. They wouldn't be able to stay here for long. Even though he had brought over 100,000 pills, he could only stay inside for a dozen days at most. Of course, after these hundreds of thousands of people entered this space, they were thoroughly shocked and astonished. They had clearly been running along a huge wooden passage, but they had actually arrived in this strange world. This was really too mysterious. Thus, over 100,000 people dedicated their worship to Huang Yu. This was truly an all-knowing ability. Yao Li, Yao Zi, Day by Day Bella, and Huang Yu temporarily formed a team of 4. They were in charge of the order of the hundreds of thousands of people who were fleeing. They were also in charge of the distribution of pills, and a certain amount of suppression by force. Of course, the so-called suppression by force was just a precaution. The probability of it happening was very low, almost impossible. As for Yang Dingtian, he continued to explore this torn space. The best result would be that this torn space overlapped with other areas, and it would be best if it was in the human countries. In this way, Yang Dingtian could directly bring people back to the human countries. Of course, Yang Dingtian felt that this possibility existed. This was because the chaotic world was an extremely complicated place. There were many planes and spaces. Every space was irregular and naturally had more than one boundary. For example, the northernmost part of the world of ice and snow bordered the first dark realm. The easternmost part of the Dongli grassland bordered the torn space. Yang Dingtian continued to fly towards the southeast direction of the torn space, constantly avoiding the floating boulders along the way. Logically speaking, this torn space should have a boundary. For example, the place where they jumped in was the western boundary. Further west would be complete darkness and nothingness. He flew towards the southeast, flying, and flying. After flying for more than 30,000 miles, there was an endless amount of floating boulders and spatial rifts. Similarly, there were no signs of life here. Finally, it was the fourth day. Yang Dingtian saw the southeast end of the torn space. The floating boulders became sparser and sparser. Finally, it was complete darkness and nothingness. Yang Dingtian sat cross-legged on the last boulder and started to absorb the mystic qi. After his celestial qi had fully recovered, Yang Dingtian flew towards the southeast for another 50 kilometers. He then released the darkness fire to create a dark vortex. It formed a black hole and finally swallowed an isolated space. Then, they collided with each other in the isolated space, and a beautiful spatial door appeared. Then, he leaped toward the spatial gate. Suddenly, the feeling of traveling through time and space came again. His body trembled slightly, and then his eyes lit up. Yang Dingtian jumped out of the torn space and entered another space. Wow, what a dreamy scene, what a beautiful scene, and also what a familiar scene. Yang Dingtian did not guess wrongly. This was the yin-yang mirror. It could be considered the northwest end of the human kingdom. Indeed, the yin-yang mirror and the torn space bordered. However, Yang Dingtian had never reached the end of the yin-yang mirror. Of course, it did not seem to have an end, because it was very similar to the endless sea. The sky stretched as far as the eye could see. The ground was like a mirror. It stretched as far as the eye could see, and there was no other scene at all. A few years ago, the Queen Devil Queen took Dongfang Bingling and disappeared at the northern end of the yin-yang mirror. When she demonized, the energy was too great, causing an imbalance between heaven and earth. As a result, the entire yin-yang mirror emitted black flames, and the entire ground was completely torn apart. Now that a few years had passed, the yin-yang mirror had completely recovered its original appearance. It was like a complete mirror, boundless and endless. Since the torn space was directly connected to the yin-yang mirror, Yang Dingtian could transfer hundreds of thousands of rebels to the yin-yang mirror. Of course, this was an incomparably huge project. Only the demon vulture could complete this plan, because only the demon vulture could fly tens of thousands of miles without stopping. Of course, it was also because the demon vulture was the most loyal winged cavalry of the Council of Light. Now there was a problem. Could the demon vulture, with its huge body, pass through the space door? Making a prompt decision, Yang Dingtian did not return to the torn space first. Instead, he flew back to Cloud Sky City at the fastest speed. After returning to Cloud Sky City, Yang Dingtian immediately did an experiment. In the end, he found that the demon vulture could pass through the space door. In fact, the size of the space door had nothing to do with the size of the body, but with the amount of energy. Then, he rode on the demon vulture King Azu and went to Zhongjing. Then he secretly appeared at the headquarters there. Seeing Yang Dingtian appear, Dongfang Minmi was shocked. He should be in the Dongli grassland at this time. The army of the northwest mainland did not receive any information about a large number of people entering the sea. Yang Dingtian directly issued a secret order to send 1,000 demon vultures to assemble immediately. Moreover, these 1,000 demon vultures did not need any knights. They were completely commanded by the demon vulture King Azu and its partner Ling Zhu. This top-secret order was completely written in code. Basically, it would not be made public or decrypted. After the 1,000 demon vultures were assembled, Yang Dingtian directly brought them back to the northwest mainland. Then, on an island in the vast sea, he secretly resupplied with countless elixirs, food, and clothes. Finally, He flew directly to the Yin-Yang Mirror at the end of the northwest mainland. After a day and a half, Yang Dingtian led 1,000 demon vultures to the end of the Yin-Yang Mirror. The reason why he brought the demon vultures, and not a single demon vulture warrior, was to keep it a secret. The demon vultures would only obey orders, and would not divulge secrets. Then, Yang Dingtian created a space door at the northwest end of the Yin-Yang Mirror. Then, he constantly injected energy to maintain the operation of the space door. Azu, order the demon vultures to fly into this space door one by one, Yang Dingtian said. The demon vulture king nodded, and then gave the order majestically. Suddenly, 1,000 demon vultures lined up in the air. One after another, they flew through the space door and entered the torn space. According to the order, these 1,000 demon vultures could not move after entering the torn space. They had to line up neatly there. In less than half an hour, all 1,000 demon vultures passed through the space door and entered the torn space. Finally, Yang Dingtian jumped abruptly and jumped into the spatial tear. At the end of the Yin-Yang Mirror, the dark vortex that had lost its energy stopped rotating. Soon, the space door was directly exposed to the air and turned into ashes. Yang Dingtian rode the demon vulture king and led 1,000 demon vultures to fly towards the northwest direction of the torn space. The floating boulders of the torn space were too dense. It was very dangerous and easy to bump into them. But fortunately, the speed of these floating boulders was very, very slow. However, these more than 1,000 demon vultures still had to fly carefully. It was impossible to imagine that they could fly thousands of miles every hour. It had been almost 10 days since they entered the torn space. All kinds of elixirs were almost exhausted. The initial excitement and stimulation were replaced by the tension and oppression of the closed space. More than 100,000 rebels became more and more uneasy and desperate. They were all crowded on a 100-mile-long boulder. This feeling of loneliness and drifting was very, very fatal. This feeling was even more gray and desperate than waiting to be slaughtered in the Holy Valley. After all, the Holy Valley was full of vitality. Of course, even so, there was no riot in the hundreds of thousands of rebels. But some people had begun to commit suicide. At first, they chose to jump directly from the edge of the boulder, and then smash into other boulders and die. This kind of suicide brought an extremely strong stimulation to others. So more and more people committed suicide. Huang Yu angrily refuted this behavior, and said that her husband would come to save them soon. She said that this kind of suicide was an act of cowardice. So this kind of suicide by falling stopped. Many people chose to commit suicide secretly. As the days passed, and the elixirs were gradually exhausted, the number of people committing suicide increased. Yao Zi had been crying for the past few days. She complained angrily. How can they do this? Yang Dingtian, and we risked our lives to save them. It wasn't easy to save them, but they want to commit suicide. How can they be so selfish? Yao Li immediately shouted, Shut up. What does a child like you know? What don't I know? Anyway, it's wrong for them to commit suicide, Yao Zi said angrily. Yao Li said in a low voice. Those who committed suicide were all weak and old. They chose to die and give the elixirs to others, leaving the chance to live to others. Once he said those words, Yao Zi immediately fell silent. She covered her face and wept even more sorrowfully. Yang Dingtian is too much. Why hasn't he returned after so long? If he doesn't come back soon, everyone here will die. Yao Zi turned her attention to Yang Dingtian. If everyone here dies, I won't spare him. At that moment, there was a sudden burst of screeching from afar. Then countless black figures could be seen flying over from the cracks of countless boulders. Yang Dingtian had returned with 1,000 demon eagles, countless food, elixirs, fruits, and clothes. They were saved. They were saved. Huang Yu immediately burst into tears. She felt extremely proud. She was proud of her man. Her husband had never disappointed anyone. He would always create miracles. He would never give up on anyone. However, her expression soon turned ugly. This was because Yao Zi had immediately pounced over and rushed to the front of Yang Dingtian before hugging him tightly. Yang Dingtian, you're amazing. I love you. I love you so much. Then she kissed him as if she was free. I didn't do that because I was his wife. But you, a little girl, did that in front of me. Yao Li was embarrassed. She whispered, I'm sorry. Then, she flew over at an even faster speed. She grabbed Yao Zi's little ears and pulled her embarrassing sister away from Yang Dingtian. Queen Hai Xian was not on the pyramid in the capital. She was in the new sacred land of the Naga Empire. The so-called new sacred land was the center of the Dongli grassland. It was under the lake, where the million-spirit demon fire was born. This place had become the top secret of the Naga Empire. Every Naga who was allowed to enter this place would have their cultivation level skyrocketed. Of course, they would not remember anything after they came out. Therefore, this place had become the sacred land of the Naga Empire. It was the most mysterious place. Gui Wuzi knelt by the lake and said, Gui Wuzi requests an audience with Her Majesty. Instantly, the huge lake began to tremble. Chapter 894. What's the matter? Queen Hai Xian did not appear. The lake shook slightly and a voice sounded. That's right, the voice did not come from Queen Hai Xian, but from the lake. Kuei Yao's battle in the Holy Valley is over. Gui Wuzi said. The lake water jumped up, showing Queen Hai Xian's displeasure. She said coldly, What, you want to disturb me for such a small matter? Just capture Huang Yu's daughter and kill the rest. Gui Wuzi said. But the people in the Holy Valley have disappeared without a trace. Huang Yu and her daughter have also disappeared. Impossible. The water in the lake suddenly shot up to a height of 100 meters and let out a shrill voice. Impossible? You have surrounded the entire Holy Valley, they can't escape. Gui Wuzi said. The old slave also thought so, but they really disappeared, as if they had evaporated from this world. In fact, 2 hours before the battle began, there were still people in the valley, but when they entered they were all gone. 1,000,000 soldiers dug hundreds of feet into the ground and found nothing. 100,000 eaglemen searched tens of thousands of miles to the east of the endless sea, but found nothing. Suddenly, the lake became silent. After a long time, Queen Hai Xian said, It's Yang Dingtian. Gui Wuzi said, That's impossible. No matter how capable Yang Dingtian is, it's impossible for him to make more than 100,000 people disappear without a trace. You don't understand. Queen Hai Xian sighed. The realm he has touched is not something you can understand. Gui Wuzi said. Then, is there a way to make up for it? To find and kill all the people Yang Dingtian hid? Ha 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 ha. Queen Hai Xian laughed. Dream on, do you know how he hid them? The old slave doesn't know. Gui Wuzi said. Following that, Queen Hai Xian sighed and said, Yang Dingtian is starting to challenge my bottom line. First he stole Venom Sha's body. Then, he created a diversion and killed Wu Daozi. Then, he used lightning to wipe out my million-strong army in the southern barbarian continent. It took me several years to build the Queen's new city and transport the million-strong army there. This is the only base we have in the human world. Now he's trying to push my limits and reach into my Naga Empire. Finally, Gui Wuzi couldn't help but interject. Your Majesty, you're indulging Yang Dingtian too much. That's right. I indulged him too much. That's why he's so insatiable. Queen Hai Xian said coldly. Perhaps defeating Wu Daozi gave him a boost of confidence and made him feel that he can shed all pretense of cordiality with me. Gui Wuzi said, He's too naive. He doesn't know how powerful Her Majesty is now. We have to give him a warning. Otherwise he'll think we're weak. Queen Hai Xian said indifferently. That's right. We have to give him a warning. Tell me, what kind of warning should we give him? Gui Wuzi said. Attack him where it hurts the most. Do you think we should attack his family? Queen Hai Xian asked. Gui Wuzi fell into silence, indicating that he agreed. Queen Hai Xian fell into deep thought and said slowly, Not for now, but if he still doesn't know what's good for him, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Gui Wuzi's face twitched. Although he was unhappy that Queen Hai Xian wasn't ruthless enough to Yang Dingtian, he didn't dare to question and nodded. Yes. After a long time, Queen Hai Xian said, Just wait. He'll come and see me. Because he can hide these people, but he can't take them away. If he wants to save them, he'll have to go through the Naga Empire. As long as he cares about these lives, he won't be able to escape. Each demon eagle could carry more than 10,000 pounds of weight. However, the space on its back was limited. Therefore, each demon eagle could only carry about 30 people at most. Therefore, 1,000 demon eagles had to make 3 to 4 trips to transport all the demi-humans out of the yin-yang mirror. After unloading the food from the back of the demonic vultures, the hundreds of thousands of rebels finally got to eat real food. Immediately, the countless people present had tears streaming down their faces as they ate. After the meal, the demi-humans immediately organized the demi-humans into groups. There were a total of 4 groups that left the torn space. Each of them had an individual code, and each code had a specific position on each demon eagle. After more than 6 hours, the first group of more than 30,000 people rode on 1,000 demon eagles and flew towards the southwest. This could be considered as the craziest and most bizarre transfer in history. 1,000 demon eagles carrying more than 30,000 demi-humans had to cross the spatial tear and reach the yin-yang mirror. Day by day, Bella suddenly said, "Sir Yang Dingtian, the demi-humans will remember this day, will remember your kindness." Yang Dingtian said, "You've used your actions to prove your nobility. Everything I've done is what I should do." Day by day, Bella said, "Sect leader, after we reach the human countries, how do you plan to settle the demi-humans?" Yang Dingtian said, "I've already taken a piece of land in the southern barbarian continent. It's almost 10,000 miles long. There are more than 1 million demi-human slaves there. They've all been liberated by us. The Council of Light has given them land. They can enjoy the same rights as the citizens of the Radiant Parliament. After you enter the southern barbarian continent, you won't be isolated because other than the million-strong army of the Radiant Parliament, most of the remaining people are from the demi-human race. In the future, we'll gradually move people from the human countries to the southern barbarian continent, but we'll be very cautious. Also, I'll suggest that the demi-humans representative enter the Council of Light's leadership and let a large number of demi-humans join the army. We'll work hard to make the demi-humans a part of the Council of Light." Day by day, Bella was extremely excited after hearing this. Yang Dingtian continued, "Of course, whether we should let the humans and demi-humans marry each other, we'll need to conduct extensive verification and discussion. This is because there are benefits to marriage. It'll prevent racial conflicts in the future. But there are also disadvantages. The demi-humans might gradually disappear as an independent, intelligent race. Of course, I'm still leaning towards marriage and integration. I can guarantee that racial conflicts won't become a huge disaster in my lifetime. But after we pass away, it'll be hard to avoid such things. At that time, the demi-humans might exceed tens of millions. They'll feel that their living space is too narrow, and they'll feel that they're being discriminated against. If there's a conflict with the humans, it'll be a world-class war. We won't be able to bear it." Day by day, Bella said, "My personal opinion is that 95% of the demi-humans are exactly the same as the humans. For example, our Foxman race can definitely marry and integrate with the humans. Of course, in this way, perhaps our Foxman race, as a separate race, might disappear. However, our blood would spread throughout the entire world and might remain in every human's body in the future. This might be an even greater matter." Yang Dingtian glanced at Day by day Bella and said, "I'm very happy that you can think this way." After a full 3 days and 3 nights, 1,000 demon eagles flew a distance of 30,000 miles and crossed the entire torn space. Then Yang Dingtian created a space portal at the end of the torn space. 1,000 demon eagles flew through the space portal one by one and entered the yin-yang mirror in the human kingdom. Everyone on the space portal was blindfolded. After a full 2 hours, 1,000 demon eagles flew through the space portal and transported over 30,000 people to the yin-yang mirror. After resting for a few hours, the 1,000 devil eagles had fully recovered. Furthermore, after consuming sufficient elixirs, Yang Dingtian brought them through the spatial door and tore open the spatial zone to transport the next wave of resistance army. Just like that, A full half a month's time was spent. Yang Dingtian didn't sleep at all and changed 2 batches of demon eagles. He finally completed an unprecedented feat. He traveled through space and rescued over 100,000 resistance soldiers from the slaughter of the Naga Empire. Then, he transported them to the Yin-Yang Mirror in the human kingdom, tens of thousands of miles away. After the 100,000 people arrived at the Yin-Yang Mirror, a total of 5,000 demon dragons, under the leadership of Song Chunhua, dragged 5,000 carts to the end of the Yin-Yang Mirror. Faction leader, Song Chunhua is here to carry out the mountain-moving plan, Song Chunhua said. None of the 5,000 demon dragons were riders. All the carts were on a sleigh track. Get on, Yang Dingtian ordered. More than 100,000 people boarded the carts in an orderly manner. Then the doors and windows were closed. The people outside couldn't see in, and the people inside couldn't see out. After everything was loaded, the 5,000 demon dragons dragged the carts and flew towards the south. After a day and a night, the 5,000 demon dragons left the Yin-Yang Mirror and entered the north. All the carts had been replaced with wheels. In the north, they rested for half a day, and then continued to the south. A day later, the 5,000 carts and more than 100,000 resistance soldiers entered the northwest continent. 8 hours later, they arrived at the east coast of the northwest continent. A fleet of more than 100 large warships was already waiting by the shore. The 5,000 demon dragons dragged the carts onto the warships and entered the cabins. Then, the fleet sailed towards the southeast. Their destination was the southern barbarian continent. This secret mountain-moving plan used countless resources from the beginning to the end. 3,000 demon eagles, 8,000 demon dragons, and 2 large fleets. However, in the entire Council of Light, there were less than 5 people who knew about this operation. Even the highest commander of the fleet in charge of the transportation did not know what he was transporting to the southern barbarian continent. When the resistance soldiers boarded the 100 large warships and entered the cabins, there were already a few hundred spiritual masters waiting there. They would have all their memories of what happened in the past month, and after leaving the Holy Valley, including Princess Xiang Xiang. This was because the space technique was a top secret and could not be made public for the time being. Perhaps it could never be made public. After a few days, the resistance soldiers would land on the southern barbarian continent. Some of them would join the Council of Light army, while most of them would be given houses and land. They would become citizens of the Council of Light and permanent residents of the southern barbarian continent. Of course, after the resistance soldiers all boarded the warships, Yang Dingtian did not continue to accompany them. He still had to see Queen Hai Xian and make a trip to the so-called sacred land of the Snakeman Empire. Originally, Yang Dingtian wanted to let Huang Yu bring his baby Wu-Er to Cloud Sky City first. However, Huang Yu felt that she had to bring the resistance soldiers to settle down in the southern barbarian continent first. Then, she would bring the baby to Cloud Sky City to see his brother, sister, grandmother and other mothers. Therefore, Yang Dingtian had no choice but to allow her to do as she wished. Huang Yu felt that the resistance army was her responsibility, and she had to wait for them to settle down before she felt that her mission was completed. Only then would she be able to regain her freedom. Yang Dingtian rode the Demon Vulture King alone and went to the Snakeman Empire from the northwest continent again. He acted as if it was his first time entering after returning. This time, Yang Dingtian did not keep it a secret and directly attracted the attention of the Snakeman Empire's air defense winged cavalry. However, the Snakeman Empire's air defense troops could not stop him at all. The Demon Vulture King Ajwa went straight in and sped up to 3,000 miles per hour. The winged cavalry of the Snakeman Empire could not even see his shadow, let alone catch up with him. Therefore, tens of thousands of winged cavalry and tens of thousands of eaglemen desperately chased after Yang Dingtian in the air. Soon, Yang Dingtian came to the center of the Dongli grassland, the burial ground. This was the place where the Dongli grassland war broke out. For thousands of years, countless wars broke out here, and more than 100 million people died. These countless resentful spirits, together with the energy of the land, finally condensed the heaven and earth level mystic fire, million spirits demonic fire. However, the bone burial ground was no longer filled with reeds and swamps. It was already full of castles and towers of the Snakeman Empire. However, the most central place was still the same. The lake in the middle was still incomparably clear. However, the entire lake was surrounded by Snakeman statues. Hundreds of statues of the Queen of the Sea Hearts surrounded the lake. Each statue was at least 100 meters tall. This lake was now the Queen's holy land. Yang Dingtian came to the edge of the lake and did not directly enter the area surrounded by the statues. Yang Dingtian of the human kingdom requests to see Queen Hai Xian. Yang Dingtian shouted loudly. Suddenly, the surface of the entire lake trembled slightly. Then countless water surged and condensed into a huge figure. It was the charming and beautiful Queen Hai Xian. She was at least 100 meters tall. The Queen Hai Xian, formed by the water, was also vivid and lifelike. Even her expression was detailed. Your Excellency Yang Dingtian, you are very capable. The Queen Hai Xian, formed by the water, said slowly. You actually hid hundreds of thousands of Holy Valley rebels in front of my million-strong army, and played me in the palm of your hand. I wouldn't dare, Yang Dingtian said. Queen Hai Xian said slowly. Yang Dingtian, do you think I am very easy to bully? Or have you become very arrogant of your cultivation after coming back this time? Otherwise, why would you provoke my bottom line again and again? Yang Dingtian said. I had no choice. Queen Hai Xian said slowly. At the entrance of the taboo continent, you injured my subordinates and took away the door to the human kingdom. Then you stole Poise's body. Then, you destroyed my million-strong army in the southern barbarian continent. Finally, you even inserted your hands into my Snakeman Empire and saved hundreds of thousands of rebels. How did you do it? I can't figure it out no matter how hard I try. Yang Dingtian fell into silence. You won't say? Then I don't need to know. Queen Hai Xian said slowly. Since you have done these things, why are you here this time? Yang Dingtian said. I want to get Queen Hai Xian's forgiveness and accept the current situation. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, the Queen Hai Xian, formed by the water, laughed crazily. Then countless flames burst out from the water and burned fiercely, representing Queen Hai Xian's anger. Yang Dingtian, do you think that I will be obedient and tolerate you just because I want to borrow your seed? Queen Hai Xian said sternly. I wouldn't dare, Yang Dingtian said. Queen Hai Xian's eyes turned into two balls of flames and stared at Yang Dingtian. Hand over Poise's body, and I can pretend that nothing happened. I can let those hundreds of thousands of people go, and let you bring them back to the human countries. I can forgive all the things you did before. Yang Dingtian shook his head. Sorry, no. Crack. Suddenly, the 100-meter-tall Queen Hai Xian, formed by the lake water, froze into ice and became a crystal-clear statue. Suddenly, the air within a few thousand meters became extremely cold. Yang Dingtian, I won't kill you. But that doesn't mean that I won't kill your family. Queen Hai Xian said slowly. That's right. You saved Huang Yu and her and your daughter. But it doesn't mean that they belong to you just because they are by your side. As long as I want to, I can go to the human countries and capture them. Or even kill them. Even if you gather the entire human countries, you won't be able to stop me. Yang Dingtian said. Speaking of Huang Yu, her baby Yang Wu looks exactly the same as Dugu Fengwu. Do you have anything to tell me? Queen Hai Xian said. You should have guessed it already. Why do you still need me to tell you? Yang Dingtian said. Dugu Xiao changed Dugu Fengwu's appearance and erased her memories before sending her to your side. He entrusted her to you and intended to free her from the evil ways and the Tiando League. But you swapped her soul spirit with slave Yanjun. Am I right? Queen Hai Xian sneered. Yang Dingtian said. Therefore, the current slave Yanjun has her own memories, but they are taken over by Dugu Fengwu's new soul spirit. That is why she is so contradictory. She has slave Yanjun's charm, and Dugu Fengwu's determination. Huang Yu is Dugu Fengwu's body, But slave Yunjun's soul spirit and willpower are stored in Huang Yu's body. Therefore she looks strong and resolute, but she is actually kind and fragile. You have filled both of them with contradictions, and made them incomplete. They have completely lost themselves. Am I right? At the end, Yang Dingtian's words were filled with rage. Duge Fengwu's memories were originally erased. Immediately after, this soul spirit was poured into slave Yunjun. It inherited slave Yunjun. Therefore, he was almost a person who was divided. It was the same for Huang Yu. The saddest thing was that the two of them didn't even know what was going on. They thought that they were born like this. This evil cultivation technique was almost the same as the Demon King Wentian's soul spirit splitting. It was still alright for slave Yunjun. She still had more complete memories, but her personality had changed. She still remembered that she was the daughter of Yun Kalin and Kuei Si. As for Huang Yu, she didn't know anything about her origin. This was because this body didn't inherit any memories. When she was with Huang Yu, she didn't know anything about her past. It was as though she suddenly appeared in this world. Dugu Xiao entrusted Dugu Fengwu to Queen Hai Xian, because he trusted her. In the end, Queen Hai Xian did the most evil soul spirit experiment on Fengwu, and slave Yunjun Dugu Fengwu was originally very pitiful. Right now she was an individual that was filled with personality and pride. She was almost completely wiped out from this world. Furthermore, a part of it was because of Yang Dingtian. Chapter 895. Can Fengwu recover? Suddenly Yang Dingtian asked. What do you think? Queen Hai Xian said slowly. If you want to recover, why did you have to erase her memories and change her appearance? Yang Dingtian fell into silence again. That's right. Dugu Fengwu's current predicament was largely related to him. If it wasn't for him, she wouldn't have been poisoned by the soul-devouring devil mystic. Back when they were getting married in the Temple of Blood, she might have pretended to be heartless, but it was only because of her personality. Dongfang Bingling and Jiang Yi forcefully took her son away from her, which caused her to be incomparably furious and even hateful. In the end, Duge Xiao changed her appearance and erased her memories in order to prevent her from being involved in the conflict between the evil ways and the Tiando League. He sent her to the bewildering abyss back then. This matter was unsolvable under the circumstances back then, especially since Fengwu's personality was so intense and unyielding. It was impossible to change. However, time could really change everything. Back then, Yang Dingtian taking Yang Li away wasn't a mistake. But even if that was the case, Dugu Fengwu might not turn against Yang Dingtian and kill him. What Duge Xiao was most worried about was that Dugu Fengwu would enter Wu Yoming's camp completely due to her anger and hatred, resulting in irreversible consequences. Now, even Wu Yuming had become neither an enemy nor a friend, let alone Dugu Fengwu. In the end, it resulted in the current situation. Should she recover? Perhaps. It wasn't something that Yang Dingtian had the authority to decide. He had already interfered with Dugu Fengwu's fate once. This time, it was better for them to decide for themselves. If Yun Zhenyu and Huang Yu wanted to recover, then he would think of ways to do so. If they were willing to be content with the current situation, then he would be content with the current situation. Alright, let's not stray from the topic and return to our question, Queen Hai Xian said. Either you hand over Poise's body, or you suffer my wrath. That's impossible, Yang Dingtian said directly. Bang! Suddenly, the ice statue of Queen Hai Xian shattered and turned back into clear lake water. Then, a beautiful figure suddenly flew out of the water. It was Queen Hai Xian, but it was Queen Hai Xian in her original form. Only its upper body was human, while its lower body was that of a snake. Moreover, it was a dark blue snake that was more than 10 meters long. She suddenly floated on the surface of the water and spoke coldly. Yang Dingtian, do you think that you are strong enough and can completely disregard me? It looks like I'll have to teach you a lesson today. Don't think that just because you defeated Wu Daozi that you can be so conceited. Queen Hai Xian suddenly raised her jade-like hand and slapped the air. All of a sudden, the entire lake's water surged into the air and condensed into a huge palm that slammed down on Yang Dingtian. Boom! A loud sound rang out. Yang Dingtian used the demonic spirit mist cloak and suddenly appeared. Bang! However, as soon as he appeared, he immediately slammed into a powerful energy wall and bounced back. Then, the huge palm that was tens of thousands of meters long slammed down. Puff! Yang Dingtian spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body seemed to have turned into ashes, and he could not feel anything. Then, this huge palm suddenly began to solidify, completely sealing Yang Dingtian inside. Yang Dingtian gritted his teeth, and the mystic fire on his body burst out, about to completely melt this piece of ice. Boom, boom, boom. Wherever the mystic fire passed, all the ice turned into ashes. However, Queen Hai Xian's ice energy was released faster. Yang Dingtian melted 10 feet, and she froze 10 feet, completely trapping Yang Dingtian inside. Yang Dingtian gritted his teeth and held the Emperor-grade soul sword in his hand. He began to forcibly break through, using the demonic spirit mist cloak flash technique, and rushed out, shattering all the ice. Bang, 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 bang. In an instant he rushed out dozens of miles. But the speed of Hai Xian's queen was still faster. He shattered 10 miles, and she froze 100 miles. Yang Dingtian was still sealed in her ice, completely unable to escape. Throughout the whole process, Hai Xian did not fight with him head-on. She completely used the water of the entire lake to fight with Yang Dingtian. I don't believe that I can't break your ice. Yang Dingtian was furious. Then, he began to release 2 mystic fires, 3 mystic fires. He injected his mystic chi to the extreme, and then slammed it. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, it was like a small nuclear bomb exploding. The light that surpassed the sun suddenly burst out. Yang Dingtian used the demonic spirit black armor and the demonic spirit fire energy shield to barely protect himself. With such a terrifying mystic fire colliding and exploding, not to mention dozens of miles of ice, even hundreds of miles of ice would instantly turn into nothing. Sure enough, almost instantly, the ice that trapped Yang Dingtian instantly turned into ashes, without even the process of melting. But it was also in the same instant that all the water vapor instantly solidified. Suddenly, the air within hundreds of miles was all shattered ice layers. Then these hundreds of miles of ice layers began to collapse, compress, and solidify. Bang, 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 bang. In an instant, from an irregular shape with a diameter of hundreds of miles, it became a cube with a diameter of dozens of miles. Bang, bang, bang. It continued to collapse and compress. An incomparably powerful energy was desperately squeezing this ice cube. From dozens of miles, it was compressed to 10 miles. At this time, the density of this ice had increased by 1,000 times. Each cubic meter of ice was already more than 2 million pounds. However, the compression still continued. Yang Dingtian felt the power on his body was getting stronger and stronger. Moreover, this was the most direct form of martial force. It was neither fire nor ice energy. Therefore, the demonic spirit fire energy shield was useless, and the demonic spirit black armor was also not very useful. He could only use his body to resist. At this time, the force squeezing his body had already exceeded a few million pounds. Then, Yang Dingtian needed to use his celestial chi energy to release a few million pounds of reverse force to offset and prevent his body from being injured. However, a few million pounds of force was almost Yang Dingtian's limit. However, the ice cube continued to compress and continued. It became 8 miles, 5 miles, 3 miles, 300 meters. At this time, the ice had already condensed countless times, and the density and pressure had increased by tens of thousands of times. The energy pressure that Yang Dingtian was enduring had already exceeded 10 million pounds. Even if he used all his strength, he would not be able to resist. However, the ice continued to compress. At this time, of course, he could release his celestial fire to temporarily tear the ice apart. However, at this time, all his celestial chi had to be used to deal with the pressure of hell. As long as his celestial chi was dispersed, his entire body would instantly shatter and turn into meat paste. Yang Dingtian made a mistake. He should not have been in such a sorry state. He should not have directly used his celestial qi to resist the ice pressure. He should have released the dark vortex when the pressure was not strong enough. The black hole of the dark vortex was incomparably powerful. It could swallow any energy, including physical pressure. However, Yang Dingtian did not want Queen Hai Xian to see the formation of the dark vortex, so he did not use this move. Now he was already in a desperate situation and had almost no strength to fight back. He really could not take it anymore. He had already sunk into a state of confusion and could barely feel his own body. He was about to be smashed into pieces or even turned into ashes. This was because his physical body could not withstand such a huge pressure. At this time, the dark green dragon in his body finally roared and was about to drill out from the depths of his energy reserve to destroy this ice formation. It was really unwilling to come out because this was not energy damage, but physical damage. If it wanted to save Yang Dingtian, it would not be as simple as just coming out of the energy reserve. It would have to rush out of Yang Dingtian's body. This would cause a lot of damage to it. If not for the fact that Yang Dingtian was about to die, it would definitely not do this. It was extremely greedy. It was still brooding over the energy that was extorted from it by the nihility Piaoling. It was unwilling to lose any bit of energy. At this time, Hai Xian felt that Yang Dingtian was about to turn into ashes. Whoosh! Immediately, she withdrew all of her energy. In an instant, the tens of millions of kilograms of pressure on Yang Dingtian's body disappeared without a trace. Yang Dingtian fell. His eyes were blurred, and he was panting heavily. As for the dark green dragon, it was incomparably glad that it did not need to drill out of Yang Dingtian's body to save him. It immediately drilled back into the depths of his energy reserve and disappeared without a trace. Yang Dingtian, are you clear-headed now? Queen Hai Xian asked coldly. Yang Dingtian replied, I have been clear-headed the whole time. I already knew that I was not your opponent. It's just that I did not know what your cultivation was like. Now I have a rough idea. No, you still don't understand, Queen Hai Xian said coldly. My cultivation method is far beyond your imagination. Then she suddenly floated in front of Yang Dingtian. She reached out and touched Yang Dingtian's pale face. Her beautiful eyes twitched slightly. Why are you so stubborn? Is my suggestion not good? You become my man. We will become the masters of the entire world. I will definitely not invade the human countries in your lifetime. Even if we conquer the human countries in the future, the emperor of the entire world will be our son. Isn't that good? Why must you be so stubborn and go against me? Yang Dingtian laughed. It was not easy for me to hold on until now. If I give up now, I will be laughed at. Who dares to laugh at you? Queen Hai Xian said. I killed them all. Who dares to laugh at you? Yang Dingtian replied. Me? Laughing at myself? Can't I? Just like how you persevered until now for your career and ambition. Once you give up, you will have nothing left. If you will not give up, I will not give up either. Queen Hai Xian said. Then, are you going to go against me to the end? Yes, Yang Dingtian said. Queen Hai Xian said. You want to raise your cultivation and then kill me? Yang Dingtian did not say anything. Then I will kill you now. Queen Hai Xian said angrily. Her beautiful eyes were burning with anger. Then, she raised her jade hand and was about to smash Yang Dingtian's head. She wanted to smash Yang Dingtian's body into pieces. However, she lowered her hand halfway and slapped Yang Dingtian's face hard. This slap was hard. Yang Dingtian's face swelled up instantly. Fortunately, he was not an idol. I really want to tear you into pieces. Tear you into pieces. Queen Hai Xian said through gritted teeth. Queen Hai Xian tried her best to calm her breathing and her anger. She said, All right, let's not talk about things out of anger. Hand over Poise's body, and I will let you go. Yang Dingtian said. You don't intend to destroy my cultivation and then imprison me. Queen Hai Xian said. I don't just want to destroy your cultivation. I also want to dig out your annoying eyes and chop off your limbs. I only want that thing to be able to copulate with me. Then, Queen Hai Xian clutched her heart and said, Don't make me angry anymore. It won't do you any good. The reason why I didn't destroy you and imprison you is because your existence is more beneficial to me. Your existence will make the Snake People Empire more valuable in the face of evil ways. Otherwise, those people will really be arrogant. Queen Hyexan tried her best to calm down and said, "Hand it over. Hand over Poisa, and we will write off this matter temporarily." "No, it's impossible," Yang Dingtian said resolutely. Queen Hyexan's gaze suddenly turned cold. She said sternly, "Yang Dingtian, what are you trying to do? You want to revive her and kill me, don't you? Do you hate me so much and want me to die so badly?" Yang Dingtian said, "I don't want you to die. I just want you to stop harming this world. The weak are prey to the strong. This is the law of survival." "What harming?" Queen Hyexan said angrily. "I will ask you one last time. Do you want to hand over Poisa's body or not? Otherwise, I will immediately go and capture Huang Yu and your daughter. If you don't agree, I will kill them one by one. Let's see if your daughter is more important or Poisa's body." Suddenly, Yang Dingtian trembled violently. If he really encountered such a situation, he had no choice. The only choice was to use all his strength and perish together with Queen Hyexan. That was to carry her and charge into the Death Continent, the world of darkness. Queen Hyexan instantly felt Yang Dingtian's anger and endless killing intent. "If that's the case, will you perish together with me?" Queen Hyexan said slowly. Yang Dingtian nodded. Queen Hyexan's chest heaved up and down. Her expression kept changing. One moment, it was filled with killing intent, as if she wanted to tear Yang Dingtian into pieces. The next moment she was lost. Her beautiful face was sometimes snow-white, and sometimes flushed red. "Perish together with me? Can you do that?" Queen Hyexan said coldly. "Maybe," Yang Dingtian said. Queen Hyexan gritted her teeth and stared coldly at Yang Dingtian. She said word by word, "Get lost, get lost." Then, she turned around and walked towards the lake. She disappeared without a trace. The entire lake turned into Queen Hyexan's face. She said coldly, "Yang Dingtian, this is the last time. Don't think that you can just squander my indulgence and affection for you. Also, although you don't touch your family, it doesn't mean that I will let you off easily. You hurt me like this. I will not let you off easily." Then, her face disappeared and turned back into lake water. Chapter 896. Looking at the surface of the lake that was gradually calming down, Yang Dingtian's emotions were complicated. He really did not expect that the disturbance this time would be settled just like that. Queen Hyexan actually let it go just like that. Originally, Yang Dingtian was prepared to use his trump card, using the sacred ground as a threat. One must know that Yang Dingtian's 3 profound flame lightning was extremely powerful, far surpassing the power of a level 19. Although it could not hit Queen Hyexan, this so-called sacred ground of the Naga Empire could not be moved. It would definitely not be able to block Yang Dingtian's 3 profound flame lightning. At that time, Queen Hyexan would definitely have to compromise, because this sacred ground was now the lifeblood of the Naga Empire. It could not be damaged, and Yang Dingtian would definitely not hand over Queen Poisa's body. Therefore, this dispute could still be settled. Of course, this way, the conflict between Yang Dingtian and Queen Hyexan would be even more intense. But unexpectedly, Queen Hyexan actually gave up threatening Yang Dingtian's family in the end. He did not know if it was because she had a bottom line in her heart regarding Yang Dingtian, or if it was because of some other reason. Or maybe it was because even though she did not care about Huang Yu's life or death on the surface, but after all, she was her family, the second family in this world. The first was of course Queen Poisa. However, this was the best outcome. Yang Dingtian finally understood that Queen Hyexan's cultivation was not something he could match up to now. She did not even fight him directly. She only used the lake water, and almost took his life. And the source of her strength was undoubtedly this sacred ground in front of him. This sacred ground was right under the lake. It should be the biggest secret of the Naga Empire. It was also the reason why the experts of the Naga Empire appeared so quickly. Yang Dingtian really wanted to go in and investigate, But it was absolutely impossible now. Because Queen Hai Exine was right below. He took one last look at the lake, as if he was trying to see through the lake and see the Holy Land inside, as well as Queen Hai Exine in the deepest part of the lake. Then, Yang Dingtian suddenly rose into the air and flew towards the south. After flying for a few hundred miles, the Demon Eagle King Asia immediately came up. Yang Dingtian rode on the Demon Eagle King and flew towards the northwest continent at the fastest speed. Half a day later, Yang Dingtian arrived in the sky above the northwest continent. However, he did not stop at Cloud Sky City. Instead, he flew directly towards the sea. Yang Dingtian had already made a trip to the Snakeman Empire and returned. The fleet carrying the half-human rebellion army was still very far from the southern barbarian continent. In just 4 hours, Yang Dingtian caught up with the fleet and landed on the largest ship. Huang Yu, Day by Day Bella, and Xiang Xiang were all on this ship. Seeing that Yang Dingtian had returned safely, Huang Yu's heart was finally at ease. As for the little darling, Yang Wu was sleeping. This little lass even needed Xiang Xiang to accompany her while she slept. The ships of this fleet were all very large. Each ship could fit over 1,000 people, which was more than enough. For example, Huang Yu and Xiang Xiang each had their own cabin, which was over 12 square meters. When Yang Dingtian came in, Huang Yu immediately threw herself into his embrace. However, Dugu Fengwu would never do that. "Husband, did she do anything to you?" Huang Yu asked. "No, this matter is over." Yang Dingtian said. "Is she so easy to talk to?" Huang Yu said. "I think she definitely has some intentions towards you. Don't think I can't see it." Immediately after, she gently snuggled into Yang Dingtian's embrace and said, "It's fine as long as this matter is over. I don't want to care about the grudges with her anymore. From now on, I don't want to care about anything else. I just want to be your wife and accompany our baby to grow up. When our baby is older, we will have another baby boy." Yang Dingtian instinctively wanted to say that she still had another baby boy. However, he didn't say it out loud and only said, "Okay." The character of Huang Yu in front of him was truly not Dugu Fengwu. She definitely didn't have any dreams of being a good wife and loving mother. Therefore, Huang Yu might look powerful and domineering, but her soul was actually that of a little woman. Yin Zhenyu might look delicate and charming, but she was actually very ambitious. Therefore, she didn't marry Yang Dingtian, and instead became his personal female officer. She became one of the most important figures in the Council of Light. In this aspect, she was very similar to Fengwu. "Hey, if you two want to be intimate, go to my cabin." Your baby daughter finally fell asleep, and it is very difficult to coax her to sleep. Xiang Xiang suddenly said with a sour tone. Yang Dingtian instantly smiled embarrassedly. However, Huang Yu's beautiful eyes actually turned hot as she whispered, "Husband, let's go there? We haven't been intimate for a long time. I want to do it again." Yang Dingtian was startled. It was fine even if they didn't get intimate for a few years. This time, it was almost a month. However, he had been so busy that he didn't have any rest for a month, let alone getting intimate with a woman. Since his woman wanted it, he had to do his best. Therefore, he directly carried Huang Yu and walked towards the other cabin. Before they started, Huang Yu's charming eyes were like silk. She panted softly and said, "Husband, we were too intense last time. Now that we have a lot of time, I want to take it slow and be very gentle." Yang Dingtian said, "No problem. I know a lot about this. I promise it will be like a spring breeze." This love that was like a spring breeze, and a drizzle lasted for a full 3 hours. "Husband, do you think I can get pregnant this time?" Huang Yu suddenly asked. "Is today the day when you can easily get pregnant?" Yang Dingtian asked. "Probably, maybe. I hope so." Huang Yu said, "My cycle is very inaccurate." Yang Dingtian knew that Yin Zhenu's cycle was also very inaccurate. Of course, he didn't have intimate relations with Yin Zhenyu, because when her cycle came, she was completely temperamental. 15 minutes ago, she was very bad-tempered, and would seize the opportunity to scold Yang Dingtian. But 15 minutes later, she would suddenly seduce him. Therefore, Every time Yin Zhenyu became moody, it meant that her cycle had come. And her cycle was very chaotic. There was no pattern at all. This should be the result of Queen Hai Xian's evil experiment. Husband, will you marry other women? Huang Yu suddenly asked. Yang Dingtian was silent for a moment. He said, I don't know. Pervert. Huang Yu complained. Yang Dingtian said, some are responsible. Huang Yu gently drew circles on Yang Dingtian's chest. Then she said, you have to give Xiang Xiang an explanation. She has waited for so many years and took good care of your daughter. I know. Yang Dingtian said. Also, if I marry Xiang Xiang, it will set an example for the Foxman race and the human race. It will let the half-human race integrate better into the human country. Annoying. Huang Yu complained. It's obviously a good thing, but you make it sound so snobbish. Then Huang Yu said, Xiang Xiang used to be very bold, but now she has become very sensitive. So you have to take the initiative in this matter. Understand? Okay. Yang Dingtian said. Then he said, say, if I ask Master to propose to Day by Day Bella, wouldn't it be more serious? Huang Yu thought for a moment. Then she nodded and said, it's good, but it doesn't seem to be enough. You can't just propose to her father. You have to propose to Xiang Xiang too. Yang Dingtian said, okay, I'll go find Yin Yan and propose to Xiang Xiang. Is it the boss of us sisters? Huang Yu asked with a strange tone. Yang Dingtian said, you can't bully her at home. She is the easiest to bully, and that's why she is the boss. PFFF. Huang Yu laughed. Then, she rolled her eyes at Yang Dingtian and said delicately, biased. Yang Dingtian stayed silent for a moment. He looked at Huang Yu's eyes and couldn't help but reveal a guilty expression. He had wronged many women, but Dugu Fengwu was the one he had wronged the most. What? I was just joking. Why are you angry? Huang Yu said delicately, she is the first wife, and we are the second wife. Of course, we have to serve her carefully. I won't retaliate when I hit or scold her. That should be fine, right? Silly. Yang Dingtian pinched her gently and said, Huang, there are some things that I don't know if I should tell you. What is it? Is it very important? Huang Yu asked. It can be considered very important. Yang Dingtian said, is it about me? Huang Yu asked. It is about you. Yang Dingtian said. You are so annoying. Huang Yu punched Yang Dingtian's chest and said, I originally didn't want to know about such important and heavy matters. But after you said it, I became very curious. Tell me then. Yang Dingtian said. Then I will start from a very, very long time ago. Go ahead. But if I fall asleep while listening, you can't blame me. Huang Yu said. This matter should have started from 7 years ago. At that time, I had just arrived at Cloud Heaven City. Yin Yan was captured by Qin Xiaobai's faction and was framed for murder. In order to save her, I requested for a martial arts duel, and Qin Xiaobai wanted to make use of this opportunity to kill me. Yang Dingtian said. At that time, his cultivation was much higher than mine. He was about 2 levels higher than me. I was completely at a loss. I went to the Temple of Blood, which was the territory of the evil ways. I wanted to go to the blood pool there to seek a breakthrough. Yang Dingtian narrated the story of himself and Dugu Fengwu. He didn't leave out any details, including the first time he met Dugu Fengwu, and the battle between her and Dongfang Bingling. However, when Yang Dingtian talked about how he saw the naked Dugu Fengwu in the blood pool, Huang Yu had already closed her eyes and seemed to have fallen asleep. However, Yang Dingtian knew that she wasn't asleep. She was listening more attentively and comfortably. Yang Dingtian spoke very slowly and explained every detail clearly. He talked about how because of Dugu Xiao, Dugu Fengwu misunderstood that he took the opportunity to take advantage of her. Then when they met at the Southwest Sea, he saved her multiple times. She forced him to contact the Hidden Sect's fake sword art and impersonate the Hidden Sect's disciple Wu Ming to obtain the mystic fire devil hammer from the divine weapons manor. Then, they went to the fire cloud devil cave to forge the soul sword and discover the mystic realm. Before Feng Wu wanted to kill him, she handed over her body to him and killed him with a palm strike. At this point, Huang Yu's delicate body trembled slightly. Yang Dingtian continued. In the mystic realm, he came back to life because of the holy water. Then, he talked about how he met Feng Wu in the Dongli grassland. Feng Wu, Guda Wuhuan, and the others fought over the million-spirit demon fire and made a move on Dongfang Bingling. He talked about how he and Dongfang Bingling worked together to fight against Dugu Fengwu, Qin Huayu, and Guda Wuhuan in the Valley of the Foxman race. He suddenly pierced Dugu Fengwu's chest with his sword. Huang Yu's delicate body twitched violently. She then covered her chest, as though she felt a throbbing pain. He talked about how Dugu Fengwu already had a child. He pierced Feng Wu and almost killed her. He also almost harmed his child. Even though it had been a long time, Yang Dingtian still twitched when he talked about it. His heart was in extreme pain, and he was extremely fearful. If something really happened back then, he could only slit his own throat. Finally, he talked about how Dugu Fengwu and Dongfang Bingling were both poisoned by the soul-devouring demon Mysterious Demon. Yang Dingtian wanted to use the tear crystal to save one of them. Dongfang Bingling chose to save Dugu Fengwu and snatched her child away from her and brought it to the Cloud Heaven City. Dugu Xiao wiped her memories, changed her appearance, and sent her to the Lost Abyss. It was to prevent Dugu Fengwu from getting involved in the battle between the righteous and evil. It was to prevent her and Yang Dingtian from killing each other. At this point, Huang Yu's face was completely covered in tears. Her delicate body was twitching. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. After he finished, Yang Dingtian could only keep repeating these 3 words. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.